When are you going to die already? Igor grumbled as he slammed the door and left the bedroom. Inside, his wife lay suffering from a terrible cough that wouldn't go away. In just a year of marriage, she had gone from being a healthy young woman to a weak skeletal figure. Their small town had only a tiny clinic with 2 doctors. One of them was a vet, who was actually more trusted than the doctor. The doctor had tried everything to help Rita. He used cough syrups, mustard plasters, plantain leaves, chamomile, and nettle. He even sent her to the steam bath regularly, but nothing made her better. Her condition just got worse. "I'm out of ideas," the doctor said with a sigh. Rita couldn't understand what was happening to her either. She had always been full of energy, but now it felt like her marriage had drained all her vitality. The villagers started gossiping. She must be cursed, they would say when they gathered at the shop or by the water pump. Rita married at 20. Igor, who was from the city, came to their village saying he wanted to bring new energy to the countryside. He got a job driving a bread delivery truck. "You should be proud of me, wife," he would boast. "Without me, there would be no bread for the whole village." Rita just nodded and didn't argue. "We even have an apartment in the city, but I'm renting it out for now," Igor would brag. "I'm saving up to buy a bigger place for us, especially if we have kids." The village women admired him and praised him as a rare and great husband. They would then go home and scold their own husbands. But Rita was happy with their little house and didn't want to move. Still, her health kept getting worse. Her cough was joined by a runny nose, and sometimes she would wake up at night unable to breathe through her nose. When this happened, she'd get up suddenly, waking Igor, who would grumble and complain. "Why are you always moving around? I need to get up early, and I can't sleep because of you," Igor complained. But as soon as his head hit the pillow, he would snore loudly, filling the room with noise. Rita would quietly get up and move to another room, where she could get some rest, though not without a headache and feeling weak in the morning. At least she could breathe a little better. Rita worked at the local library, handing out books and filling out forms. The villagers enjoyed borrowing books and showing off their new knowledge at the water pump. Even though her job wasn't physically demanding, she came home feeling exhausted. Igor, who finished his bread deliveries early, would wait for her to come home, expecting her to cook dinner and take care of him. "Why can't you peel some potatoes before I get home? It takes longer to wait for you to do it," he'd grumble. "Well, excuse me, do you think I don't deserve to rest after carrying bread all day?" He'd snap back, even though Rita knew he hardly did any of the heavy work himself. Other people handled the unloading. She was too tired to argue. By evening, her cough would worsen, her eyes would get red, and a rash would spread over her skin. "Are you sure this isn't contagious?" Igor asked one morning, noticing the red spots on her back. "I don't need more problems." He slammed the door and left without breakfast. From then on, he started working night shifts, saying the stores needed fresh bread in the mornings. In reality, he was lying to Rita and staying away for days or even weeks, leaving her to struggle alone. At night, she could barely breathe, her cough was unbearable, and Igor's constant criticism and indifference only made things worse. "Why don't you go to the city hospital?" her friend Svetlana suggested. "They have real doctors there, not just the quack we have here." "What can they do?" "I'll rest and get better," Rita replied weakly. Svetlana hesitated before saying, "I didn't want to worry you, but some people say they saw Igor with a girl from the city who was here for the harvest. But you know how gossip is." Rita gave a bitter smile. She had noticed her husband's change in behavior long ago. She'd even found lipstick stains on his shirts a few times, although lately he'd started washing them himself. "I'm taking care of you since you're so weak," he'd say, but he left the sweaters and pants for her to wash. Rita's condition continued to worsen. She had been bedridden for 2 days, unable to move, her body racked with a violent cough, her eyes red and watery, and her skin covered in a rash. "When are you finally going to die?" Igor snapped. His new girlfriend from the rumors turned out to be real, and she was demanding more of his time, even wanting him to move to the city. But Igor couldn't leave because all his talk about having a city apartment was a lie. He didn't actually have one. He lost his previous job because of a black mark on his record. He'd been caught siphonning fuel from the truck he drove and selling it on the side. That's why he had to leave the city. Then Rita, a naive country girl, came along and even signed over half of her house. which she had inherited from her grandmother. "Come in, this is your half of the house," Igor's voice called from the hallway. "Good, solid house," an unfamiliar voice responded. "And who lives in the other half?" the stranger asked. "An old sick woman. She'll be gone soon," Igor said, with no shame in his voice. "All right, I'll take it," the stranger said. There was the sound of money rustling, a handshake, and then the door slammed. Rita, hearing them leave, tried to get up but stumbled and knocked over a chair. The stranger hurried into the room at the noise. "Still alive?" he asked, lifting Rita and helping her back onto the bed. "Where does it hurt?" "Who are you?" Rita asked, surprised enough to momentarily stop coughing. "I'm the new owner of this half of the house." "And you? Who are you?" The man had expected to find an elderly woman but was surprised to see a young, though very sickly, woman. "I live here. This was my house," Rita said with a bitter smile, then started coughing again. "Hold on," the new owner said, leaving and coming back with a glass of water. "Drink it slowly." Rita, not knowing why, took the water. It helped soothe her throat and reduce the coughing. "Thank you, but this won't last." "What's your name, neighbor?" she asked as he took the empty glass. "Rita, short for Margarita," she replied. "Margarita, like the flower. A lovely name. I'm Taras." "Nice to meet you," he said, extending his hand. Rita wanted to shake it but then remembered her rash and pulled back. Taras caught her wrist before she could pull away and examined her hand closely. "How long have you had this?" he asked, frowning. "Are you a doctor or something?" Rita asked, a bit sarcastic. "Almost," Taras said seriously. "It comes and goes. It usually gets worse when I'm coughing a lot and feeling weak. It started a year ago. I've never had anything like this before." She apologized. "I need to lie down. My head is spinning." She rested her head on the pillow. "And where did you come from?" "I haven't seen you around before," she asked, studying Taras. "I'm not from here. I came from the city," he said. "Do you want the truth, or?" He smirked. "All right, I'll tell you the truth then. At this point, there's not much that scares me, and I've got nothing left to lose. I'm of no use to anyone anymore, and no one cares if I live or die. I might not be around much longer anyway." The doctor didn't check a patient's allergy to a medication he prescribed, and the patient went into anaphylactic shock and died. The family wanted justice, and I was supposed to be imprisoned. But then my wife died during childbirth, leaving me with a young son. I couldn't handle the court stress and take care of him at the same time, so I took the blame. We were already separated, so we split the apartment. I invested my share, but inflation wiped out most of it. I only had enough left to buy a room in a communal apartment. When I saw the ad for half of a house for sale in the village, I thought it was my lucky break. The seller said the other half might be available soon, and that an old sick woman lived there who would probably die soon, so I could get it cheap. But now, seeing things as they really are... Rita listened with tears streaming down her face. She never expected such betrayal from her husband. "And where is he now?" she asked quietly. "He went to the city with his fiancée. Left his phone with me, told me to call if, well, you know," Taras replied. "I see," Rita said with a bitter smile. Taras turned out to be a great neighbor. He helped her around the house and even got a job at the local hospital, replacing the old doctor who had left. One day, Taras suggested, "Marga, why don't you come to my office? I have a few ideas about your illness. Have you noticed you're coughing less and your complexion is better?" Rita had noticed but was afraid to believe it, thinking it might just be her imagination. Eventually, Taras practically insisted she come to the city with him to see a specialist. After a thorough examination, they discovered she had a rare allergy to her own husband, specifically to his biological material. If she had stayed with him much longer, she could have gone into anaphylactic shock. "Your whole body was reacting against the marriage," the specialist explained. "I didn't know anything like that was even possible," Rita said, shaking her head in disbelief. "Thank you. If it weren't for you, I might still be suffering or even worse." Life without Igor restored Rita's health and happiness. She even began to forget she had ever been married to him. Taras was always there for her, and one evening during dinner, he slid a small box across the table. Rita opened it and, shocked, looked up at him. "It's a ring," Taras said with a smile. "Yes, it's a ring," he chuckled. "But I'm still married," Rita said with a shrug. That's fixable, Tara's replied. You don't have any children, so the divorce will be quick and easy. You just need to handle the paperwork. Rita followed his advice. She had no idea where her ex-husband was, so after 2 court sessions where he didn't show up, the divorce was finalized automatically. Not long after, Rita and Tara submitted their marriage application, and a month later, they were married. I'm so glad I'm not allergic to you, Rita said with a smile, snuggling up to Tara's. A few months later, someone knocked on their door. Tara's opened it to find Igor standing there, looking disheveled, unshaven, wearing a worn-out jacket, and reeking of alcohol. Well, Taras, Igor said, his breath heavy with booze. So is she dead yet? By my calculations, she should have been gone by now. You should have called me so I could finish the paperwork for the other half of the house and sell it. I've been waiting. Have you forgotten? Or have you changed your mind? I've changed my mind, Taras said, hoping Rita wouldn't come out and see him, but she did. Darling, who's there? Rita called, stepping out. When she saw Igor, she recoiled in surprise. Margit, you're alive. Igor stammered, stunned to see her healthy and pregnant. How is this possible? She's my wife, he stuttered. No, Igor, she's my wife now, and if I see you near her again, no one will ever find you. I've got nothing to lose, Taras said quietly but firmly. I'll make sure you disappear so completely that no one will ever find a trace of you. Understand? Igor, frightened, backed away quickly. Would you really have buried him? Rita asked, peeking from the room and hugging Taras tightly. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up, and to make sure you don't miss any more stories, hit the bell when you subscribe. Wishing you all the best.
I never expected a single voicemail to unravel my entire world. My father's message sat there for 3 hours before I finally noticed it, buried under meeting notifications and client calls. His voice trembled in a way I'd never heard before. Lila, honey, I need to talk to you. It's about your sister. Things aren't. Just call me back when you can. Please. My name is Lila, and until that message, I thought I'd made peace with being the responsible daughter. The boring one. The one who didn't need constant bailouts or midnight rescue missions. But something in Dad's voice sent ice through my veins. I was halfway through another mindless quarterly report when the message played. My office suddenly felt too small, the Manhattan skyline outside my window a mere backdrop to the storm brewing in my head. I tried calling him back immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. 3 times. Everything okay? Grant poked his head into my office, coffee in hand. My boyfriend of 2 years had an uncanny ability to sense when something was off. You look like you've seen a ghost. It's Dad, I said, already packing my laptop. Something's wrong. He left this weird message about Ivy, and now he's not picking up. Grant's expression shifted. He knew all about my younger sister's drama, the endless string of emergencies that always seemed to end with our parents opening their checkbook. Want me to drive you out there? I shook my head. I need to do this alone. Besides, someone has to explain to Johnson why his financial analyst disappeared in the middle of the day. The drive to my parents' house in Connecticut felt endless. Every scenario played through my mind, each worse than the last. Had Ivy finally crossed a line? Was she in trouble with the wrong people? Or was this just another elaborate scheme to get more money? I pulled into their driveway just as the sun was setting. The house looked the same as always. Pristine colonial, perfect landscaping. My mother's prized roses blooming along the walkway. But something felt off. There was an unfamiliar car parked in the driveway, sleek, expensive, definitely new. Before I could reach the front door, it swung open. There stood Ivy, looking immaculate as always in designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Behind her, I caught a glimpse of a man I didn't recognize, lounging on our parents' couch like he owned the place. Lila. Ivy's surprise seemed genuine, but there was something else in her expression. Fear? Guilt? What are you doing here? Dad called me, I said, watching her face carefully. Where is he? Oh, that. She waved dismissively, but her hand shook slightly. He's probably in his study. You know how he gets about his little projects. Mason, honey, could you grab us some wine? The man from the couch, Mason, apparently sauntered past us toward the kitchen. He gave me a once-over that made my skin crawl. Who's Mason? I asked quietly. Ivy's smile brightened, but it didn't reach her eyes. My new boyfriend. He's been staying here while we figure out our next move. Mom and Dad love him. Something in the way she said it set off alarm bells. I stepped past her into the house, noting the subtle changes. New artwork on the walls. Expensive-looking electronics. Shopping bags from luxury brands scattered near the stairs. Where's Mom? I asked, heading toward Dad's study. Spa weekend with her friends. She'll be devastated she missed you. I reached for the study door, but Ivy grabbed my arm. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into my skin. Lila, wait, she whispered urgently. Before you go in there, there's something you should know. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Behind the perfect makeup and confident smile, I saw something I'd never noticed before. Desperation. What have you done, Ivy? The study door creaked open behind us before she could answer. Dad stood there, looking 10 years older than when I'd last seen him. His hands clutched a stack of papers that trembled slightly. Lila, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so glad you're here. We need to talk about the family trust. Dad's study had always been a sanctuary of order and calm. Now, papers littered every surface, and the air felt thick with tension. He gestured for me to sit, but I remained standing, my eyes fixed on the documents in his trembling hands. The family trust is empty, he said quietly. Every penny gone. The words hit me like a physical blow. That trust was meant for our futures, for Ella's education. How? Your sister had access, he continued, spreading papers across his desk. At first, it was small withdrawals. Emergency expenses, she said. Then larger ones. Investment opportunities. Business ventures. I caught glimpses of bank statements, transfer records, all with Ivy's elegant signature. The amounts made my head spin. Where's the money now? Ask your sister's boyfriend. Dad's voice hardened. Mason's been managing their investments. Some cryptocurrency scheme, real estate deals that never materialized. Your mother doesn't know yet. A child's laughter drifted through the window. I moved to look out, spotting Ella playing in the backyard. She was chasing butterflies, her dark curls bouncing in the sunlight. Mason stood nearby, typing furiously on his phone. What about Ella's college fund? I asked, already knowing the answer. Gone too. The door creaked open behind us. Ivy stood there, her perfect composure cracking slightly at the edges. It's not what you think, Lila. Mason has connections. The investments just need time to mature. Stop. My voice came out sharper than intended. Just stop lying. I'm not lying. Ivy's eyes filled with tears. Mason knows what he's doing. Tell them, honey. Mason appeared in the doorway, all smooth confidence and practiced charm. Walter, I understand your concerns, but these kinds of investments take time. We're talking serious returns here. Show me the paperwork, I interrupted. Both Mason and Ivy flinched. The investment contracts, the property deeds, anything. Those documents are confidential. Mason started, but Dad cut him off. Get out of my house. His voice was quiet but firm. Now. Mason's charm vanished instantly. You can't do that. Ivy and I have rights. Rights. I laughed, the sound harsh in the quiet room. To what? The money you stole. Lila, please. Ivy grabbed my arm. You don't understand. We had plans. Good plans. If you just listen. The front door slammed, making us all jump. Mom's voice rang through the house. I'm home early. The spa was fully booked. Can you believe it? Ivy's grip on my arm tightened painfully. Please don't tell her. Not yet. Let me fix this. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Behind the designer clothes and perfect makeup, I saw something I'd never noticed before. Fear. Raw, desperate fear. Mom appeared in the doorway, her face brightening at the sight of me. Lila, what a wonderful surprise. Then she noticed the tension in the room, the papers scattered across Dad's desk. Her smile faltered. What's going on? Before anyone could respond, Ella's cry pierced the air. Through the window, I saw her sprawled on the grass, tears streaming down her face. Mason was nowhere in sight. I broke free from Ivy's grip and rushed outside. By the time I reached Ella, she was sitting up, holding her scraped knee. Uncle Mason promised to catch me, she sniffled. But he left. I scooped her up, my niece's small arms wrapping around my neck. Over her shoulder, I watched Mason's expensive car speed down the driveway, taking what was left of our family's savings with it. Back inside, I could hear Mom's voice rising in disbelief, Ivy's sobs, Dad's attempts to calm them both. Ella hiccuped against my shoulder, her tears soaking into my blouse. "Is Mommy in trouble?" she whispered. I held her tighter, watching the chaos unfold through the window. Mom had collapsed into a chair, her face ashen. Ivy was on her knees beside her, mascara running down her cheeks. Dad stood between them, looking lost. "Everything's going to be okay?" I lied, knowing things would get much worse before they got better. "I promise." My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Grant. "How bad is it?" I didn't respond. How could I explain that this was just the beginning? The next morning, I woke up in my old bedroom to the sound of Mom crying. I'd stayed overnight to help sort through the financial mess, but nothing prepared me for what I found in Dad's office at dawn. Mom sat at his desk, surrounded by even more paperwork than yesterday. Credit card statements, loan documents, second mortgages I never knew existed. Dad stood by the window, looking years older than he had just hours ago. "The house," Mom whispered, her voice breaking. "She remortgaged the house." I grabbed the nearest document. There was Ivy's flowing signature, right next to Mom's perfect imitation of it. My stomach lurched. "She forged your signature?" "No," Mom's shoulders slumped. I signed. She said it was for Ella's future. A business opportunity that would set them up for life. The magnitude of the deception hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about the trust fund anymore. This was systematic destruction of our family's entire financial foundation. "Where is she?" I asked. "Still sleeping," Dad said quietly. "She took some pills last night. Said she couldn't handle the stress." I fought back a bitter laugh. The stress she couldn't handle was of her own making. My phone buzzed, a text from Grant. "Found something about Mason. Call me ASAP." Before I could step out to call him, Ivy appeared in the doorway. She looked terrible, hair tangled, makeup smeared, wearing the same clothes as yesterday. "I can't explain," she started, but Mom cut her off. "Explain what, Ivy? How you convinced me to risk our home. How you let that man." "Mason loves me." Ivy's voice cracked. "He wouldn't just leave. Something must have happened." "Something did happen," I said, holding up my phone. "Grant found his real name. It's not Mason Hale, it's Marcus Henderson. He's done this before." The color drained from Ivy's face. "What?" 3 other families in the past 2 years. He finds vulnerable women with access to family money, convinces them to invest in his schemes, then disappears. Ivy swayed on her feet. No, that's not. He loves me. He loves Ella." "Where is Ella?" I suddenly realized I hadn't heard my niece this morning. "In her room. Sleeping." Ivy's eyes darted away from mine. Something in her tone sent me running up the stairs. Ella's room was empty. Her favorite stuffed rabbit, the one she never slept without, lay on the perfectly made bed. "Ivy." My scream brought everyone running. "Where is she?" Mason said. He said if anything went wrong, he'd take her somewhere safe. Ivy's words tumbled out between sobs. "Just until things calmed down. He left a note." I grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at me. "You let him take your daughter?" "He's her father." Ivy screamed back. "He wouldn't hurt her." "He's not her father." Dad's quiet voice cut through the chaos. We all turned to stare at him. "Ivy, we've never said anything, but we know. Ella was born before you even met Mason." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom sank to the floor, her legs giving out. Ivy stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. My phone buzzed again. Grant had sent an address, a storage facility on the outskirts of town. "Mason rented a unit there last week," his message read. "Paid cash." I was halfway down the stairs before anyone could react. "Call the police," I shouted over my shoulder. "Tell them everything." "Lila, wait." Ivy ran after me, grabbing my arm. "Please, let me come with you. She's my daughter." I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Behind the mess and tears, I saw something new, determination, maybe even courage. "Fine," I said, already heading for my car. But when this is over, we're going to have a very long talk about who Ella's real father is. Ivy flinched but followed me. As we pulled out of the driveway, I caught a glimpse of our parents in the doorway. Mom was on the phone, presumably with the police. Dad held her close, his free hand pressed against the door frame of the house we might soon lose. "I'm sorry," Ivy whispered beside me. "I never meant for any of this to happen." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Save it. Right now, all that matters is finding Ella and making Mason pay for everything he'd done to our family." The storage facility loomed ahead, a maze of identical metal doors under the harsh morning sun. Grant was already there, pacing by his car. One look at his face told me this wasn't going to be good. "Unit 247, he said, falling into step beside us. "But Lila, there's something else." "Mason's real identity?" "It gets worse." Before he could continue, we heard Ella's voice, clear, frightened, coming from somewhere in the maze of storage units. Ivy broke into a run, and I sprinted after her, my heart pounding against my ribs. We found the unit, its door slightly ajar. Inside, Ella sat on a folding chair, clutching her stuffed rabbit. A laptop on a table beside her played a recording of her voice on loop. "No, Mason.
No real ella.
Just a trap." Well. Mason's voice came from behind us. The whole rescue party arrived right on schedule. We spun around. He stood blocking the exit, looking nothing like the polished boyfriend who'd charmed our parents. His designer clothes were gone, replaced by practical dark clothing. The charm had vanished too, leaving something cold and calculated in its place. "Where is she?" Ivy's voice shook. "Safe. For now." He pulled out his phone, showing us a live video feed of Ella sleeping in what looked like a motel room. Insurance, you might say. Grant stepped forward, but Mason raised a warning hand. "Careful. One call, and my partner moves her somewhere you'll never find." "Partner?" I caught Grant's eye. This was the something worse he'd try to tell me. "You really should have dug deeper into your family history, Lila." Mason's smile turned cruel. "Asked your mother about her first marriage. About the money she inherited when her first husband died so tragically." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Mom's occasional mysterious phone calls. Her insistence on handling certain financial matters personally. The way she'd supported Ivy's relationship with Mason despite Dad's concerns. "Mom knows you," I said. It wasn't a question. "Knew my father, actually. Before she married yours." Mason leaned against the doorframe, casual as if discussing the weather. "She's been quite helpful, making sure Ivy trusted me. Keeping Walter in the dark about certain arrangements." Beside me, Ivy made a sound like she'd been struck. "Mom. Helped you. Why do you think she signed those papers so easily?" Mason laughed. "Though I'll admit, she thought this was just about money. She has no idea about Ella." Speaking of which, he held up his phone again. The video feed had changed. Ella was awake now, crying for her mother. "Here's the deal. The trust fund money is gone, but we all know there's more. Offshore accounts. Property in the Caymans. Your mother's been quite busy over the years. I don't know anything about." I started, but he cut me off. "No, but she does. And now you have motivation to help me get it. Let's call this generational justice." A police siren wailed in the distance. Mason's expression hardened. "You have 24 hours. Get your mother to transfer everything to the accounts I'll send you, or Ella disappears permanently." He backed away, then added with a twisted smile, "Oh, and Ivy? Maybe ask her about Ella's real father while you're at it. That's quite a story, too." He vanished around the corner. Grant ran after him but returned seconds later, shaking his head. "He's gone." Car was waiting. Ivy had collapsed against the storage unit wall, her whole body shaking. Mom knew. All this time she knew. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number with banking details and a photo of Ella, tears streaming down her face as she held today's newspaper. "We need to talk to Mom," I said, helping Ivy to her feet. "Now." "And say what?" Ivy laughed bitterly. "Hey Mom, remember your first husband's son? The one you've been helping steal from us." Grant touched my arm gently. "Lila, there's more you need to know about your mother's first marriage. About how her husband really died." The sirens were getting closer. We had 24 hours to unravel decades of family secrets, face our mother's betrayal, and somehow save Ella. And something told me we'd only scratched the surface of how deep this conspiracy went. "Let's go," I said, already moving. "It's time to find out exactly who our mother really is." The drive home felt like moving through a nightmare. Every traffic light was a countdown to disaster, every second ticking away against Ella's chances. Mom and Dad were waiting in the living room when we arrived, their faces drawn with worry. "The police are looking for Mason," Dad started, but Mom's sharp intake of breath stopped him. She knew. One look at her face and I could see it all, the guilt, the fear, and something else. Calculation. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked quietly. Mom's composure cracked for just a moment. "Planning what?" "Don't." Ivy's voice was raw. "Just don't. Mason told us everything. About your first husband. About helping him get close to us." Dad turned to Mom. Confusion etched across his face. "Celeste. It wasn't supposed to be like this," Mom whispered. She reached for her purse, pulled out a sleek tablet. "Richard, my first husband, he stole everything from me. When his son contacted me last year, said he could help me get it back. By stealing from your own daughters?" My laugh sounded hollow, even to my ears. "By putting your granddaughter in danger?" "Ella." Mom's face went pale. "What about Ella?" Grant stepped forward, laying printed documents on the coffee table. "Mason has her. And he's demanding access to offshore accounts you apparently set up years ago." "That's impossible," Mom said, but her hands were shaking. "Those accounts were just insurance. No one knows about them except Richard's old partners," Dad finished. We all turned to look at him. "I found some old papers last month. That's why I called you, Lila. I was trying to figure out how to tell you that your mother's first husband didn't die in an accident. He disappeared with millions, leaving her to take the fall for his investment fraud." Mom sank into her chair. "I spent years rebuilding our reputation, protecting you girls from that scandal. When Mason said he could help me recover what Richard stole. So you helped him target Ivy?" I couldn't keep the disgust from my voice. "Your own daughter?" "I didn't know about Ella," Mom repeated desperately. "You have to believe me. I thought we could all get justice." My phone buzzed. Another photo of Ella, this time with a clock clearly visible. 20 hours left. "Justice." Ivy laughed bitterly. "Look what your justice got us, Mom. My daughter is missing, our family's broke, and for what? Revenge against a man who's probably dead." "He's not dead." Grant's quiet voice cut through the tension. "Richard Hale is very much alive. And according to my sources, he's in town." Mom's tablet slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor. On its screen, I caught a glimpse of banking information, accounts holding millions. "That's what this is really about, isn't it?" I picked up the tablet. "Not justice. Not revenge. Mason wants access to these accounts because his father's planning something bigger. We have to call the police," Dad said, reaching for his phone. "No." Mom grabbed his arm. "If Richard finds out I've talked, there are things you don't know. Things I've done." Another photo came through on my phone. Ella was crying harder now, and a bruise was visible on her arm. "I don't care what you've done," I said, my voice steel. "But you're going to help us fix this." "No." "How?" Mom whispered. I looked at the banking information on her tablet, then at Grant. Years of financial analysis had taught me to spot patterns and something about these transactions. "We're going to give Mason exactly what he wants," I said slowly. "Access to the accounts. But first, we're going to lay a trap. Call Richard. Tell him you're ready to talk." "Lila, no," Grant warned. "These people are dangerous." "So am I." I met Mom's eyes. "You wanted justice? Let's get it. But we do this my way." "For Ella." Mom nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. "For Ella." The clock on my phone showed 19 hours remaining. Time to find out just how far I'd go to save my niece, and whether our family could survive the truth that was about to come out. The cafe was nearly empty when Richard Hale walked in. He looked nothing like Mason, tall, elegant, with silver hair and the kind of confidence that only comes from decades of getting away with everything. Mom's hands shook as she raised her coffee cup. "Celeste," he said warmly, sliding into the booth across from us. "You look exactly the same." I watched Mom's facade crack slightly. Beside me, Grant tensed, his hand brushing against the recording device hidden under the table. "Where's my granddaughter?" Richard's smile never wavered. "Where's my money?" Mom countered. He laughed, the sound sending chills down my spine. Still direct. "I always loved that about you." His eyes shifted to me. "And this must be Lila. The smart one, according to Mason." "Cut the small talk," I said. "We know what you want." "Do you?" He pulled out his phone, showing us a new video of Ella. She was sleeping again, but something wasn't right. Her breathing looked shallow, irregular. "What did you do to her?" My voice cracked. "Nothing permanent." Yet, Richard's expression hardened. "The accounts, Celeste. All of them. Not just the ones Mason found." Mom went pale. Don't lie to me." His voice dropped dangerously low. "You think I didn't know about Hong Kong? Singapore? You've been moving money for years, building your own little empire. Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" My phone buzzed, a text from Ivy. "Police found the motel. Empty. Blood on the sheets." The world tilted sideways. I grabbed the table to steady myself, mind racing. This wasn't supposed to happen. We had a plan. The police were watching. Grant's hand gripped my knee under the table, warning me to stay calm. "Time's running out," Richard continued pleasantly. "For everyone. Mason tells me Ella's been asking for her mother. Shame if something happened before they could reunite." "The transfers are ready," Mom whispered, sliding her tablet across the table. "Everything. Just, please." Richard examined the screen, then smiled. "Almost everything." He looked directly at me. "Except the account in Grand Cayman. The one under Lila's name." The air left my lungs. Mom turned to me, confusion written across her face. "What is he talking about?" "Oh, this is delicious." Richard leaned back, genuinely amused. "She doesn't know, does she? Your perfect, responsible daughter has been skimming from the family trust for years, building her own safety net, just like her mother taught her." Grant's hand withdrew from my knee. The betrayal in his eyes cut deeper than any knife. "It wasn't like that," I started, but the words felt hollow. How could I explain the years of watching Ivy get everything while I played by the rules? The quiet rage that led me to create that account, feeding it slowly with diverted funds? "Tick-tock," Richard sang, standing up. "You have 1 hour to transfer everything." "And Lila." His smile turned cruel. "Mason says to tell you he found your other accounts too. The ones even your mother doesn't know about." He walked out, leaving devastation in his wake. Mom wouldn't look at me. Grant's silence spoke volumes. My phone buzzed again, another text from Ivy, following Mason. "Think I know where they're keeping her. Don't tell Mom." "Don't," Grant warned, reading over my shoulder. "It's probably a trap." "I don't have a choice." I stood up, my legs barely supporting me. "Mom, transfer everything. Buy us time." "Grant, I'm sorry. I'll explain everything later." "There won't be a later," he said quietly. "Not for us." I walked out of the cafe into the gathering darkness, my carefully constructed world crumbling around me. Everything I'd built, my relationship, my family's trust, my image as the responsible one, was falling apart. But none of that mattered now. Somewhere out there, my niece was dying. My sister was walking into a trap. And I had exactly 57 minutes to decide which secrets I was willing to sacrifice to save them. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from an unknown number, like mother, like daughter. "Come alone or they both die." The abandoned warehouse loomed against the night sky, its broken windows reflecting the city lights like shattered mirrors. Ivy's car sat empty in the parking lot, driver's door still open. My headlights caught something glinting on the pavement. Her phone, screen cracked. I killed the engine and checked my watch. 20 minutes left. The warehouse door creaked open at my touch. Inside, emergency lights cast sickly green shadows across rusted machinery. Footsteps echoed somewhere above. "Took you long enough." Mason's voice carried from the metal catwalk overhead. "Did you bring it?" I held up my laptop. "Access to everything." "Where are they?" "Show me first." My fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up account details. 6 accounts. Nearly 40 million total. All the passwords and authentication codes ready to transfer. A child's whimper echoed through the space. My head snapped up, catching movement in the shadows above. Interesting, Mason said, stepping into the light. But what about the 7th account? The one you opened the day Ella was born. My blood ran cold. Behind Mason, I could see Ivy now, held firmly by Richard. Ella wasn't with them. Where is she? My voice shook. Safe, Richard called down. For now. Unlike your sister here, who just couldn't stay away. Ivy struggled against his grip. Lila, don't. It's not about the money. They're using us too. Richard's hand clamped over her mouth. That's enough, dear. Mason, show her. Mason tossed something over the railing. It landed at my feet, a familiar leather portfolio. Dad's company letterhead peeked out from inside. Your father's been quite busy, Mason smiled. All those years helping your mother hide her fortune, he picked up some useful skills. Skills that certain organizations would pay handsomely to acquire. The pieces clicked together. You're using our accounts to launder money. Smart girl. Richard released Ivy, shoving her toward the stairs. But not smart enough. Your little secret account? It's been perfect for moving funds internationally. Small amounts, regular intervals, all looking legitimate thanks to your sterling reputation. Ivy stumbled down the metal steps, her face bloody. They killed him, she gasped. Ella's real father. He found out what they were doing and... A gunshot cracked through the air. Ivy screamed, clutching her arm. Blood seeped between her fingers. Last chance, Mason said. The final account. Now. My laptop felt heavy in my hands. Years of resentment, of playing it safe while Ivy took risks, had led to this moment. I'd created that account out of spite, fed it with stolen money out of some twisted sense of justice. Now it might get us all killed. Okay, I said quietly. You win. I set the laptop down, hands raised. Mason descended the stairs, gun trained on me. Behind him, Richard dragged Ivy to her feet. The authentication code, Mason demanded. I smiled. Check your phone. His brow furrowed. A second later, every emergency light in the building flashed red. Sirens wailed in the distance. What did you? The code triggered a failsafe, I said. Every transaction from the past year, every shell company, every hidden transfer, it's all being sent to the FBI right now. Richard's curse echoed through the warehouse. Mason lunged for me, but I was already moving. The gun went off, the shot going wide. Mom's at the motel. I told Ivy as chaos erupted around us. She found Ella. They're safe. Mason recovered, taking aim again. But Ivy was faster. She slammed into him, sending them both crashing into a stack of crates. The gun skittered across the floor. Richard's footsteps pounded overhead, racing for the back exit. Flashlights bounced off the walls as FBI agents swarmed in through every entrance. I grabbed Ivy's good arm, pulling her towards safety. I'm sorry, I whispered. For everything. She squeezed my hand, tears cutting through the blood on her face. Me too. Outside, red and blue lights painted the night. Mom stood by an ambulance, Ella wrapped safely in her arms. Grant was there too, talking to the agents. Our eyes met across the parking lot. He nodded once, and I knew somehow we'd find our way back from this. But first, we had a family to rebuild. 6 months later, I stood in the courthouse parking lot, watching Mason and Richard being led away in handcuffs. The trial had been brutal, forcing every family secret into the harsh light of public scrutiny. But it was finally over. They'll be in prison for a long time, Grant said quietly beside me. We weren't back together. Not really. But we were talking again. Baby steps. Ivy emerged from the courthouse, her arm still in a sling. Ella skipped beside her, clutching her ever-present stuffed rabbit. They looked different now, both of them. Lighter somehow, despite everything they'd lost. Ice cream? Ella asked, tugging at my hand. Some things hadn't changed. Actually, Ivy said, we need to stop by the house first. Dad wants to show us something. The family home had survived, barely. Mom's careful financial planning had protected just enough to keep it, though the interior was mostly empty now. The artwork and luxury items were long gone, sold to pay restitution. Dad waited in his study, surrounded by boxes. Girls, he smiled, looking more like himself than he had in months. Help me with these. Inside each box were photos, documents, Letters, pieces of our family history we'd never seen. "I've been keeping these," Dad explained, waiting for the right time. He handed Ivy a worn envelope. Inside was a photograph of a young man in a military uniform. "Ella's father," Dad said gently. "James Mitchell. He worked at my company, discovered the money laundering scheme. He tried to stop it." Ivy's hands trembled as she traced the man's features, so similar to Ella's. "Why didn't you tell me?" "He asked me not to. He was gathering evidence, trying to protect you both. When he disappeared." Dad's voice caught. "I should have done more." "You did what you could," I said, remembering the careful records Dad had kept. The quiet ways he'd tried to shield us while gathering evidence of his own. Mom appeared in the doorway, hesitating before entering. She looked older now, but somehow more real without the perfect facade she'd maintained for so long. "I found this," she said, holding out a small notebook. "In Richard's things after the arrest." It was a ledger, filled with dates and numbers. But in the margins were notes, observations about our family, about Ivy and me, stretching back years. Richard had been watching us, planning, long before Mason entered our lives. "He was never going to stop," Mom whispered. "Using us, hurting us. I thought I was protecting you all, but..." "We all made mistakes," I said, thinking of my own secret account, now seized as evidence. "We all thought we were doing the right thing." Ella climbed into my lap, flipping through one of the photo albums. "Who's that?" she asked, pointing to a picture of two little girls, Ivy and me, covered in mud, laughing in the backyard. "That's your mom and me," I smiled. "Before things got complicated." "Are they still complicated?" Ivy caught my eye across the room. "Something passed between us, understanding maybe. Or forgiveness. Getting simpler every day," she answered. Later, as we sorted through the remains of our past, Grant pulled me aside. "Your father showed me something else," he said, handing me an envelope. "He wanted you to have it when you were ready." Inside was a letter from James Mitchell, dated just days before his disappearance. He'd written about courage, about doing the right thing even when it cost you everything, about protecting those you love by telling them the truth. At the bottom was a postscript: "Watch over them, all of them. Sometimes the strongest families are built from broken pieces." I looked around the study at Mom and Dad, heads bent together over old photos, at Ivy, teaching Ella to make paper airplanes from blank ledger pages, at Grant, still here despite everything. We were different now. Stronger maybe, or at least more honest about our weaknesses. The money was gone, the secrets exposed, the carefully constructed images shattered. But as Ella's laughter echoed through the empty house, I realized something. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what was missing all along. "Ready for that ice cream?" I asked. Ella grabbed my hand, then Ivy's, pulling us toward the door, toward whatever came next. Together.
I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping my morning coffee, when my phone buzzed. It was a voicemail from Lila. Odd, since she usually texts. I pressed play, expecting her cheerful voice, but instead there was silence. A long, unnerving silence. Then, just before it ended, I heard something. A faint, muffled cry. It sent a chill down my spine. "My name is Margot, and I'm a dental hygienist. My life is pretty ordinary, filled with routine checkups and the occasional dental emergency. But that morning, everything felt different. That voicemail was like a dark cloud settling over my sunny kitchen. I tried calling Lila back immediately. No answer. I texted her, hoping for a quick reply, but the minutes ticked by with nothing. As I sat there, my mind wandered back to the last few weeks. Lila had been withdrawing from family events, always with some vague excuse. I'd brushed it off as her being busy with work or just needing space. But now I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Ethan, my husband, walked in, still in his pajamas. "You look worried," he said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "It's Lila," I replied, replaying the voicemail for him. His brow furrowed as he listened. "Maybe it's nothing," he said, trying to reassure me. "You know how phones can be." I nodded, but my gut told me otherwise. "I think I need to go see her," I said, standing up and grabbing my keys. Ethan didn't argue. That's one of the things I love about him. He's always been my rock, supporting me even when I'm chasing shadows. The drive to Lila's place felt longer than usual. My mind was racing, filled with possibilities, each one more unsettling than the last. I thought about the last time I saw her. She seemed fine, maybe a bit tired, but nothing out of the ordinary. Yet, there was something in her eyes, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place. Fear, perhaps? When I arrived, I knocked on the door, trying to keep my anxiety in check. Carter, my son-in-law, answered with his usual charming smile, but it felt different this time. Forced, maybe. "Margot, what a surprise," he said, stepping aside to let me in. "Lila's in the kitchen." I found her there, making breakfast for Olive. She looked up, surprised to see me. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I got your voicemail," I said, watching her closely. Her face went blank for a moment, then she forced a smile. "Oh, that must have been Olive playing with my phone." I wanted to believe her, but something in her voice didn't sit right. I watched as she turned back to the stove, her movements a bit too deliberate. Olive was sitting at the table, drawing. She looked up and gave me a big smile, completely oblivious to the tension in the room. Carter joined us, leaning against the counter. "Everything okay?" he asked, his eyes darting between Lila and me. "Just checking in," I said casually, though my heart was pounding. "We missed you at dinner last weekend." Lila shrugged, not meeting my gaze. "Work's been crazy." We made small talk, but the air felt thick with unspoken words. Lila seemed distracted, her eyes flicking to Carter whenever he spoke. I noticed the way she flinched slightly when he touched her shoulder. It was subtle, but it was there. As I left, I hugged Lila a little tighter than usual. "Call me if you need anything," I whispered, hoping she'd hear the deeper meaning. Driving home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I thought about the voicemail, the silence, and that faint cry. It echoed in my mind, urging me to dig deeper. I knew I had to find out what was really going on, even if it meant uncovering something I wasn't ready to face. That night, as I lay in bed, the question lingered in my mind. What was Lila hiding, and how far was I willing to go to protect my daughter? The next day, I found myself back at Lila's doorstep. I hadn't planned on visiting again so soon, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was bubbling beneath the surface. As I knocked, I rehearsed my lines in my head, trying to sound casual yet concerned. Lila opened the door, her eyes widening in surprise. "Mom, you're back already?" I shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Thought I'd drop by. Maybe take you and Olive out for lunch." She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder. "Carter's home today. Maybe another time." I could feel the tension in her voice, like a tightly wound coil ready to snap. "Just a quick bite," I insisted. "I miss spending time with my girls." Carter appeared behind her, his smile as polished as ever. "Margot, twice in 2 days? We're honored." I forced a smile, feeling the insincerity seep through his words. "What can I say? I love my family." Lila looked between us, her eyes flickering with something I couldn't quite read. Fear? Resignation? Whatever it was, it made my heart ache. "Actually," Carter said, wrapping an arm around Lila's shoulders, "we were just about to head out ourselves." "Where to?" I asked, trying to keep the conversation light. "Just errands," Lila replied quickly, her eyes avoiding mine. "Groceries and stuff." I nodded, though my instincts screamed that there was more to the story. "All right, another time then." As I turned to leave, Olive bounded into the room, her little face lighting up when she saw me. "Grandma," she squealed, wrapping her arms around my legs. I knelt down to her level, ruffling her hair. "Hey, sweetheart. How about a playdate at my place soon?" Olive nodded enthusiastically, but Carter's voice cut in, smooth and controlling. "We'll see, Olive. Maybe next weekend." I kissed Olive's forehead, feeling the weight of Carter's gaze on me. "I'll hold you to it," I said, standing up. Walking back to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just witnessed a carefully choreographed performance. Lila's evasiveness, Carter's charm. It all felt like part of a script designed to keep me at bay. Back home, I found Ethan in the garage, tinkering with his latest project. "How'd it go?" he asked, wiping his hands on a rag. "Strange," I replied, leaning against the workbench. Lila seemed off. And Carter, well, he's always too smooth for my liking. Ethan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Maybe you should talk to Jonah. He might have noticed something too." I considered it. Jonah and Lila were close, always had been. If anyone could help me piece this puzzle together, it was him. Later that evening, I called Jonah. He picked up on the second ring, his voice warm and familiar. "Hey Mom, what's up?" "Just wanted to chat," I said, trying to sound casual. "Have you talked to Lila lately?" "Yeah, a few days ago," he replied. "Why?" I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. "She seems distant. Have you noticed anything?" There was a pause on the line, then Jonah sighed. "Actually, yeah." She mentioned feeling overwhelmed, like she couldn't catch a break. I could hear the concern in his voice, mirroring my own. Did she say why? Not directly, Jonah admitted. But she hinted at feeling trapped. I thought it was just work stress. A chill ran through me. Trapped. The word hung heavy in the air, echoing my own fears. I think there's more to it, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Jonah was silent for a moment, then he said, "What do you want to do?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision. I need to find out what's really going on. But I can't do it alone. I'm with you, Mom, Jonah said, his voice steady and reassuring. Whatever you need. Hanging up, I felt a sense of resolve wash over me. I wasn't alone in this. With Jonah by my side, I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter how deep or dark it might be. As I lay in bed that night, I replayed the day's events in my mind. Lila's hesitation, Carter's controlling presence, Olive's innocence caught in the middle. The pieces were all there, scattered and incomplete. But I was ready to put them together, one way or another. I closed my eyes, the question that had haunted me since that voicemail still lingering. What was Carter hiding? And how far would I go to protect my daughter and granddaughter? The following weekend, Jonah and Mia invited us over for dinner. It was a welcome distraction from the gnawing worry that had taken root in my mind. As we sat around their dining table, the warmth of family camaraderie filled the room. But underneath, I felt a simmering tension, like a pot on the verge of boiling over. "How's Lila been?" Jonah asked casually, passing me the salad bowl. I hesitated, glancing at Ethan, who nodded slightly, encouraging me to speak. "She's been distant," I admitted, my voice low. "There's something going on and I'm worried." Mia, ever the perceptive one, leaned forward. "Do you think it's Carter?" I nodded, feeling the weight of unspoken fears pressing down on me. "There's something off about him. I can't put my finger on it, but Lila's not herself." Jonah exchanged a glance with Mia, then turned back to me. "I've been thinking the same. Lila's always been strong, but lately she seems subdued." Ethan cleared his throat, breaking the tension. "We need to find out what's really happening. Maybe talk to Lila again, but carefully." Just then, the doorbell rang, interrupting our conversation. Jonah got up to answer it, and a moment later, he returned with an unexpected guest, Carter. "Hope I'm not interrupting," Carter said, his smile wide and disarming. "Lila mentioned you were having dinner, and I thought I'd swing by." My heart sank. His presence felt like a shadow cast over the evening. "Of course," I said, forcing a smile. "You're always welcome." Carter took a seat, his eyes scanning the room, as if assessing the dynamics. "Lila's at home with Olive. She sends her love." As we resumed dinner, the conversation felt strained, with Carter steering it towards superficial topics. But underneath, I sensed an undercurrent of tension, like a predator circling its prey. Mia, trying to lighten the mood, asked Carter about his work. "How's the marketing world treating you?" He launched into a rehearsed spiel about his latest project, his words smooth and practiced. But I noticed how he avoided eye contact, his gaze flickering nervously around the room. Jonah, ever the teacher, shifted the conversation back to family. "You know, Olive's been doing great in school. She's such a bright kid." Carter's smile faltered, just for a moment. "Yeah, she's a smart one," he said, his voice lacking the usual warmth. As the evening wore on, I watched Carter closely, noting the subtle cracks in his facade. The way his fingers tapped restlessly on the table, the slight edge in his voice when he spoke about Lila. It was all there, hidden beneath layers of charm. After dinner, as we gathered in the living room, Carter excused himself to take a call. As soon as he was out of earshot, Jonah turned to me. "Did you see that?" I nodded, my heart pounding. "He's hiding something. I can feel it." Mia looked concerned. "What do we do?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision. "We need to dig deeper. Find out what he's really up to." Just then, Carter returned, his expression unreadable. "Sorry about that," he said, slipping his phone into his pocket. "Work never stops, does it?" We all forced smiles, the tension palpable. As the evening drew to a close, Carter said his goodbyes, his charm back in place. But as he left, I caught a fleeting look in his eyes, one that sent a shiver down my spine. It was a look of control, of someone who knew they held the upper hand. Driving home, I replayed the evening in my mind, the pieces of the puzzle slowly coming together. Carter's unexpected visit, his restless demeanor, the way he seemed to monitor us. It all pointed to something deeper, something darker. I glanced at Ethan, who was staring out the window, lost in thought. "We need to act," I said, breaking the silence. "Before it's too late." Ethan nodded, his expression grim. "We'll figure it out, Margot. Together." As we pulled into the driveway, I felt a renewed sense of determination. I didn't know what Carter was hiding, but I was more resolved than ever to protect my family. No matter what it took, I would uncover the truth and bring my daughter back from the shadows. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of me. It was one of those rare moments when the house was silent, and I could almost hear my own thoughts weaving a tangled web of worry and determination. I knew I had to confront Lila, but the fear of pushing her away gnawed at me. Ethan walked in, sensing my unease. "You look like you've been up all night," he said, taking a seat across from me. "I have," I admitted, running a hand through my hair. "I keep thinking about Lila. I need to talk to her, but I'm scared I'll make things worse." He reached across the table, his hand warm and reassuring. "You won't. She needs to know we're here for her, no matter what." His words gave me a sliver of courage. I nodded, knowing he was right. I had to act, even if it meant risking everything. Later that day, I found myself outside Lila's house again, my heart pounding in my chest. I knocked, trying to steady my breathing. When Lila opened the door, her eyes widened with surprise. "Mom, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Can we go for a walk?" She hesitated, glancing back into the house. "Carter's out," she said finally, stepping outside and closing the door behind her. As we walked down the street, I chose my words carefully. "Lila, I've noticed you've been distant, and I know something's wrong." She looked straight ahead, her face a mask of composure. "I'm just busy, Mom. You know how it is." I stopped walking, turning to face her. "Lila, I got a voicemail from you. It was just silence and a cry. I'm worried." Her facade cracked just for a moment, and I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. "That must have been a mistake," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Lila, you can tell me anything," I urged, my heart aching for her. She sighed, looking down at her feet. "It's complicated, Mom. Carter, he just gets stressed sometimes." I felt a surge of anger, not at her, but at the situation that made her feel trapped. "Lila, this isn't just stress. I'm here to help you, but you have to let me." She bit her lip, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I don't know what to do," she confessed, her voice breaking. I reached out, pulling her into a hug. "We'll figure it out together," I promised, feeling her tremble in my arms. As we stood there, I realized the depth of her fear, and it only fueled my resolve. I had to protect her, no matter the cost. That evening, back at home, I shared the conversation with Ethan. "She's scared, Ethan. Really scared." He nodded, his expression grim. "We need to find something concrete, something that can help her." Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Jonah. "Found something. Can we meet?" Ethan and I exchanged a look, our hearts in sync with the urgency of the situation. We drove to Jonah's place, where he greeted us with a folder in hand. "I did some digging," Jonah said, his voice low. "Carter's got a history. Financial troubles, shady business deals. It's all here." I flipped through the papers, each revelation like a punch to the gut. "Why didn't we see this before?" I asked, feeling a mix of anger and guilt. "He's good at hiding it," Jonah replied. "But this gives us leverage. We can use it to help Lila." Ethan nodded, his jaw set with determination. "We need to show this to Lila. She needs to know she has options." As we sat there, the weight of our discovery hung heavy in the air. It was a turning point, a chance to shift the power dynamic and give Lila the courage to break free. But just as we were making plans, Jonah's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face paling. "It's Lila," he said, his voice urgent. "She's asking for help. Now." The room went still, the gravity of the situation sinking in. We had to act, and fast. The stakes had never been higher, and the time for waiting was over. As we rushed to her aid, I felt a fierce protectiveness surge within me. This was my family, and I would do whatever it took to keep them safe. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew we had to face it together, armed with the truth and the unbreakable bond of family. As we sped towards Lila's house, the air was thick with urgency. Jonah drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, while Ethan sat beside him, silent but alert. I was in the back seat, clutching my phone, waiting for any updates from Lila. The message had been brief, just enough to convey the desperation in her voice. "Help. Now." When we arrived, the front door was ajar, swinging slightly in the breeze. My heart pounded as I pushed it open, calling out for Lila. The house was eerily quiet, each step echoing in the silence. "Lila," I called, my voice trembling. There was a faint sound from upstairs, a muffled sob. I rushed up the stairs, Jonah and Ethan close behind. We found Lila in Olive's room, holding her daughter close. Olive was crying, her small frame shaking with fear. "Lila, what happened?" I asked, kneeling beside them. She looked up, her face streaked with tears. "Carter. He just snapped. I told him I needed space, and he lost it." Ethan crouched down, his voice calm but firm. "Where is he now?" Lila shook her head. "He stormed out. I don't know where he went." I pulled her into a hug, feeling the weight of her fear. "You're safe now," I whispered, though the words felt hollow. The threat of Carter still loomed large. Jonah looked around, his expression tense. "We need to get you both out of here, just in case he comes back." Lila nodded, her resolve hardening. "I can't stay here. Not anymore." As we gathered their things, I felt a mix of relief and dread. We were taking action, but the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. I glanced at Olive, who clung to Lila, her eyes wide and scared. I wanted to promise her everything would be okay, but the truth was, I didn't know what lay ahead. Back at our house, we settled Lila and Olive in the guest room. The familiar surroundings offered a small comfort, but the tension lingered in the air. Over dinner, the conversation was subdued, each of us lost in our thoughts. After we put Olive to bed, Lila joined us in the living room. Her face was drawn, the weight of the day etched in every line. "I can't believe it came to this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing, Lila. You're protecting Olive, and that's what matters." She nodded, though her eyes were filled with uncertainty. "What if he comes after us? What if he tries to take Olive?" I felt a surge of anger and protectiveness. "We won't let that happen," I said, my voice firm. "We have the information Jonah found. We can use it to keep him at bay." Lila looked at Jonah, who nodded. "It's enough to get a restraining order, at the very least. We'll make sure you're safe." As we discussed our next steps, a new determination took root within me. I had been driven by a need to protect my family, but now the stakes were higher. It wasn't just about keeping Lila and Olive safe. It was about ensuring they could live freely, without fear. But even as we made plans, a part of me wondered about Carter. What had driven him to this point? Was he truly irredeemable, or was there something deeper at play? The questions gnawed at me, challenging my perception of justice and revenge. Was I seeking to protect my family, or was I driven by a need to punish Carter for the pain he'd caused? The next morning, as I prepared breakfast, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I hesitated, then opened it. It was a photo of Lila and Olive taken from a distance with a single word beneath it. "Soon." My blood ran cold, the implications clear. Carter was watching us, waiting for his moment. I showed the message to Ethan, who frowned, his expression darkening. "We need to go to the police," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. I nodded, feeling the weight of the decision. We were in deeper than I'd imagined, and the road ahead was fraught with danger. But I knew one thing for certain. I would do whatever it took to protect my family, even if it meant facing my own fears and doubts. As we prepared to take the next steps, I felt a flicker of hope. We were united, stronger together than we were alone, and in the face of uncertainty, that was enough to keep us moving forward. The morning after receiving Carter's chilling message, I found myself at the police station, my heart heavy with dread. Ethan stood beside me, his presence a steadying force, as we explained the situation to the officer. Lila sat quietly, holding Olive on her lap, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion and fear. "We need protection," I said, my voice firm despite the anxiety knotting my stomach. "Carter's been threatening us." The officer nodded, taking notes. "We can issue a temporary restraining order, but you'll need to provide evidence of these threats." I handed over the folder Jonah had compiled, the weight of its contents pressing down on me. This should be enough. After what felt like an eternity, we left the station with a promise of action, but the reassurance felt hollow. The system moved slowly, and Carter was unpredictable. As we drove home, the reality of our situation settled over me like a dark cloud. We were doing everything we could, yet it felt like we were always one step behind. Back at the house, Lila and Olive retreated to their room, while Ethan and I sat in the living room, the silence between us heavy with unspoken fears. "What if this isn't enough?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ethan sighed, rubbing his temples. "We have to believe it will be. We can't let him win by living in fear." His words were meant to comfort, but the nagging doubt remained. I felt like we were fighting a battle on shifting sands, never sure of our footing. Just then, Jonah arrived, his expression tense. "I did some more digging," he said, handing me a new set of documents. "Carter's been making some shady deals. If we can expose him, it might help." I glanced through the papers, feeling a flicker of hope. This could work, I said, though my voice lacked conviction. The stakes were high, and the risks even higher. As we discussed our next steps, the doorbell rang. My heart leapt into my throat, fear gripping me. Ethan went to answer it, and I held my breath, expecting the worst. But it was just Mia, her face a mix of concern and determination. "I thought you might need some backup," she said, joining us in the living room. Her presence was a balm, reminding me that we weren't alone in this fight. We had family, and that was our greatest strength. As the day wore on, we planned and prepared, but the tension never left the room. Each sound outside made me jump. Every ring of the phone sent a jolt of fear through me. It was a waiting game, and the uncertainty was suffocating. That evening, as we gathered for dinner, Lila spoke up, her voice tremulous but steady. "I can't keep living like this," she said, her eyes meeting mine. "I need to take control." I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "We're with you, whatever you decide." She nodded, drawing strength from our support. "I want to confront him. I need to tell him it's over." The thought of facing Carter made my blood run cold, but I understood Lila's need for closure. It was a risk, but one she was willing to take. As we solidified our plan, a sense of resolve settled over us. We were taking back control, refusing to be victims any longer. But even as we prepared, a part of me feared the unknown. Carter was unpredictable, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he had one last card to play. The next day, as we set out to meet Carter, my heart was a storm of emotions. Fear, anger, determination. They all swirled within me, pushing me forward even as doubt whispered at the edges of my mind. We arrived at a neutral location, a small cafe where Lila had arranged to meet Carter. I watched from a distance, my heart in my throat as she approached him. Ethan and Jonah flanked me, ready to step in if needed. As Lila spoke to Carter, I saw the tension in her posture, the way she squared her shoulders against his presence. Their conversation was too far away to hear, but I could see the anger in Carter's eyes, the way his hands clenched into fists. Suddenly, Carter's demeanor shifted, his expression turning cold and calculating. He said something, and Lila's face went pale. She turned to us, her eyes wide with fear. "He's threatening to take Olive," she said, her voice shaking as she reached us. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, the final twist in a nightmare that seemed never-ending. We had pushed Carter into a corner, and now he was lashing out with everything he had. As we regrouped, the enormity of the situation crashed over me. We were fighting for Lila's freedom, for Olive's future, and the path ahead was more uncertain than ever. But in that moment, surrounded by my family, I felt a fierce determination rise within me. We would not be defeated. We would stand together, no matter what came next. The air was thick with tension as we approached Carter's house, the setting sun casting long shadows across the driveway. This was it, the moment we had been building towards, the confrontation that would determine our future. I felt a mix of fear and determination coursing through me, each step forward a battle against the instinct to turn and run. Ethan, Jonah, and I moved as one, a united front. Lila was with us, her resolve steely despite the tremor in her hands. Olive was safely with Mia, away from the chaos that was about to unfold. We knocked on the door, and it swung open to reveal Carter, his expression a mask of surprise quickly replaced by a smirk. "Well, this is unexpected," he said, leaning against the doorframe with feigned nonchalance. "We need to talk," Lila said, her voice steady. Carter's eyes flicked to me, then back to Lila. "Is this some kind of intervention?" "You could say that," Jonah replied, his voice calm but firm. "We know what you've been doing, Carter." Carter's smirk faltered, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Lila stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "It's over, Carter. I'm done living in fear." For a moment, Carter said nothing, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the situation. Then, with a sudden burst of anger, he slammed the door shut, locking us out. I felt a surge of panic, but Ethan was already moving, pounding on the door. "Carter, open up. We just want to talk." There was a tense silence, and then the door opened again, Carter's demeanor cold and calculating. "Fine. Let's talk." We entered the house, the familiar surroundings now tinged with a sense of foreboding. Carter led us to the living room, where we all stood, the air crackling with tension. "You think you can just walk in here and tell me how to live my life?" Carter said, his voice laced with bitterness. "You have no idea what it's like." "I know enough," Lila replied, her voice strong. "Enough to know I deserve better. Olive deserves better." Carter's eyes flashed with anger, but there was something else there too, a vulnerability, a crack in his armor. I was trying to protect us, he said, his voice dropping. By controlling us? Lila shot back, her words sharp. That's not protection, Carter. That's fear. As they spoke, I watched Carter closely, seeing the battle waging within him. He was a man cornered, his facade crumbling under the weight of his own insecurities. You think you're so righteous, Carter said, turning his gaze to me. But you don't know what it's like to feel powerless. I stepped forward, my heart pounding. I know more than you think, I replied, my voice steady. And I know that power doesn't come from control. It comes from love and respect. Carter's expression wavered, and for a moment, I saw the man beneath the mask. A man driven by fear and insecurity, trapped in a cycle of his own making. The room was silent, the tension palpable. Then, in a move that surprised us all, Carter sank into a chair, his head in his hands. I don't want to lose Olive, he said, his voice breaking. Lila knelt beside him, her anger tempered by compassion. You need help, Carter. We can't do this anymore. For a moment, it seemed like the confrontation would end in a stalemate, but then Carter looked up, his eyes filled with a mix of desperation and surrender. I don't know how to change, he admitted, the words raw and vulnerable. It was the unexpected twist we hadn't anticipated, a moment of clarity in the midst of chaos. Carter wanted to change, but he didn't know how. We'll help you, Lila said softly, her voice filled with a resolve that surprised even me. But you have to let us go. Carter nodded, the fight leaving him. Okay, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Okay. As we left the house, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It wasn't the resolution I had envisioned, but it was a resolution nonetheless. Carter had chosen to face his demons, and in doing so, he had given us the freedom we sought. Walking away, I realized that the confrontation had brought us face to face with the core themes of our journey: revenge, justice, and ultimately, forgiveness. It wasn't about defeating Carter. It was about finding a path to healing for all of us. As we drove home, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in a gentle twilight. It felt like a new beginning, a chance to rebuild and move forward, stronger and more united than ever before. The house felt different now, filled with the comforting sounds of family. Lila and Olive had moved in with us, and the change was palpable. It was as if the walls themselves had relaxed, shedding the tension that had gripped us for so long. I watched as Lila sat at the dining table, her focus on a new graphic design project. Her face was serene, a quiet confidence replacing the shadows that had haunted her. Olive played nearby, her laughter a sweet melody that filled the room. It was a reminder of what we had fought for: a life free from fear, a future filled with hope. I felt a deep sense of peace, knowing we had reached a turning point. Ethan joined me in the kitchen, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. They look happy, he said, nodding towards Lila and Olive. They do, I replied, leaning into him. It's a new beginning. As we prepared dinner, Jonah and Mia arrived, their presence adding to the warmth of the evening. We gathered around the table, the conversation light and filled with laughter. It was a stark contrast to the tension that had once defined our lives. After dinner, Lila stood up, holding a small stack of papers. I have something to share, she said, her voice steady and filled with emotion. We watched as she unveiled her latest design, a vibrant piece that captured the essence of freedom and resilience. It was a testament to her journey, a symbol of her newfound independence. It's beautiful, Jonah said, admiration in his voice. Lila smiled, her eyes bright with gratitude. It's a reflection of everything I've learned. About strength, about family. We applauded, the room filled with a sense of accomplishment and unity. It was a moment of closure, a reminder of how far we had come. Later, as the evening wound down, Lila handed me an envelope. This came for you, she said, her tone thoughtful. I opened it, finding a letter from Carter. His words were unexpected, a heartfelt apology, an acknowledgement of his faults, and a plea for forgiveness. It was a twist I hadn't anticipated, a reminder that redemption was possible, even for him. I read the letter aloud, the room silent as we absorbed its contents. Carter's words were sincere, filled with a vulnerability that hinted at change. What do you think? Ethan asked, his voice gentle. I think it's a start, I replied, folding the letter. But forgiveness is a journey, not a destination. Lila nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. I hope he finds peace, she said softly, her eyes meeting mine. As we sat together, I reflected on our journey. We had faced challenges that tested us, pushed us to our limits. But through it all, we had emerged stronger, more united than ever before. The themes of revenge and justice had woven through our story, shaping our actions and decisions. But in the end, it was love and forgiveness that had guided us towards healing. As the night drew to a close, I felt a sense of closure, yet a lingering question remained. Could Carter truly change? Would he find the redemption he sought? It was a question that hung in the air, a reminder that life was filled with uncertainties. But as I looked around at my family, I knew we would face whatever came next together. Our journey was far from over, but we were ready for whatever lay ahead. In that moment, I realized that the true strength of our family lay not in our ability to avoid conflict, but in our capacity to overcome it. We had been tested, and we had prevailed, bound by love and resilience. As I turned out the lights and headed to bed, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. We had found our new dawn, and it was brighter than I had ever imagined. I always thought my biggest problem in college would be deciding what to wear to parties or managing my caffeine addiction. Instead, I'm staring at an email that's making my hands shake. 3 months of unpaid tuition. How is that even possible? My name is Harper, and up until 10 minutes ago, I was having a pretty decent Thursday morning. I'd aced my financial analysis midterm, scored free coffee from the campus cafe, thanks to a barista who can't spell my name right, and was planning to celebrate with my best friend Jake tonight. Now I'm sitting in my dorm room, trying to make sense of numbers that shouldn't exist. The Family Future Fund, that's what Dad always called it, was supposed to cover my entire degree. He'd been putting money away since I was in diapers, proud of his responsible planning. No daughter of mine is starting life with student debt, he'd say at every family dinner, chest puffed out like a proud rooster. My hands are trembling as I log into our joint savings account. The balance makes me blink hard, like maybe my eyes are playing tricks on me. $47.23. That's it. Where there should be tens of thousands, there's not even enough for a textbook. This has to be a mistake, I mutter, pulling up the transaction history. My stomach drops as I scroll through withdrawal after withdrawal, all made at ATMs near River Rock Casino. Dad's signature is on every single one. My phone buzzes, it's Mom calling. I let it go to voicemail, not trusting my voice right now. She's probably just checking in, like she does every Thursday. She doesn't know. How could she not know? I'm about to call Dad when a text from an unknown number pops up. Tell Tom the clock's ticking. Gee, the campus seems eerily quiet as I walk to my car. It's like everyone else has disappeared, leaving me alone with this crushing weight in my chest. I should be heading to my next class, but instead, I'm driving to the factory where Dad works, trying to rehearse what I'll say. He's on his lunch break when I find him, sitting alone at a picnic table outside the building. He looks smaller somehow, hunched over his sandwich like he's trying to disappear. Harper? Shouldn't you be in class? His smile falters when he sees my face. I drop my phone on the table, the tuition notice displayed on the screen. Want to explain this? The color drains from his face. He sets down his sandwich with shaking hands. Sweetheart, I can explain. Don't sweetheart me. I cut him off. The future fund is empty. Every penny gone. What did you do? I was trying to fix things, he whispers, looking around nervously. I had a system. It was working at first. I was going to win it all back, plus extra for your graduation present. A harsh laugh escapes me. A system? That's what you're going with. His eyes dart past me, and I turn to see a man watching us from the parking lot. He's maybe mid-40s, wearing an expensive suit that looks out of place at a factory. When he catches me looking, he smiles and raises his coffee cup in a mock toast. Dad's breathing quickens. Harper, you need to go. We'll figure this out, I promise. Just don't tell your mother. Please. Figure what out? The empty account or whatever's going on with that guy over there. I ask, but Dad's already standing up, gathering his things with trembling hands. I love you, sweetheart. More than anything. Remember that, okay? As I watch him hurry back into the factory, leaving half his lunch behind, I realize something's very wrong. Not just the gambling. There's something in his eyes I've never seen before. Fear. The man in the suit is gone when I look back at the parking lot, but I can still feel the weight of his smile. Something tells me this is bigger than just lost tuition money, and I'm going to find out exactly what my father has gotten himself into. The next morning, Mom's humming in the kitchen when I come downstairs, flipping pancakes like it's just another Friday. The sight of her wearing Dad's old Kiss the Cook apron makes my stomach twist. She has no idea her world is about to shatter. You're up early, she says, sliding a plate toward me. Everything okay? You missed our Thursday call. I push the pancakes around my plate, buying time. Just busy with school stuff. The lie tastes bitter. Hey, Mom. Have you checked the family accounts lately? She pauses mid-flip, and something flickers across her face. Your father handles all that. You know me and numbers, we don't get along. She forces a laugh, but it sounds hollow. Before I can press further, Dad appears in the doorway. He looks like he hasn't slept, his work shirt wrinkled and untucked. Our eyes meet, and I see the silent plea in his. Morning, beautiful ladies, he says, kissing Mom's cheek. His hands are shaking as he pours his coffee. My phone buzzes. It's Jake. Where are you? Study group started 20 minutes ago. I've got to go, I say, standing up. Thanks for breakfast, Mom. Dad follows me to the door. Harper, wait. Don't, I cut him off. I saw that man yesterday. Who is he? Greg's just a business associate. Dad glances over his shoulder toward the kitchen. He's helping me sort things out. By threatening you? I keep my voice low. I'm not stupid, Dad. I saw how scared you were. He grabs my arm, gentle but urgent. Promise me you'll stay away from him. And the casino. This isn't your problem to fix. I yank my arm free. You made it my problem when you gambled away my future. At the campus library, Jake's waiting outside with 2 coffees. One look at my face and his easy smile fades. That bad, huh? I need a favor, I say, taking the coffee. What do you know about River Rock Casino? Bad news, he says immediately. My cousin worked security there. Said the owner, Greg Martin, runs more than just gambling. Why? The name hits me like a punch. Greg, the man from the parking lot. Just curious. I lie, but Jake's known me too long. Harper, he says, what's really going on? Before I can answer, my phone rings. Unknown number. Hello, Miss Larkins. A smooth voice familiar from yesterday. Greg Martin here. I believe we have a mutual interest in your father's financial situation. My hand tightens around the phone. What do you want? To help. Your father's in deeper than you know. Meet me at the casino tonight, and I'll explain everything. Come alone. The line goes dead. Jake's watching me, concern etched on his face. Who was that? Nobody. I say, but my mind's racing. I need to find a job. Today. Know anywhere hiring. He runs a hand through his hair. Linda's salon is looking for a receptionist. But Harper, you're scaring me. What's happening? I spot Mom's car pulling into the campus parking lot. She never comes to campus. Never. I've got to go. I tell Jake, already moving. Cover for me in study group? I duck behind a column as Mom parks. She's carrying a manila envelope and looks determined. My heart sinks as she heads toward the financial aid office. My phone buzzes again. Another text from Greg. TikTok. Tonight, 8 p.m. Unless you want Mommy to find out just how much Daddy owes. I watch Mom disappear into the building, clutching that envelope like a lifeline. She's probably trying to take out a parent loan, not knowing there's nothing left to borrow against. Standing there, caught between my mother's desperate attempt to help and my father's web of lies, I make a decision. I'll meet Greg tonight. Not because he threatened me, but because I need to know exactly what I'm up against. First, though, I have a job interview to get to. Because whatever happens next, I'm done relying on anyone else to secure my future. The River Rock Casino looks different at night. Neon lights paint everything in harsh reds and blues, making even the well-dressed people entering look slightly sinister. I sit in my car, watching Greg Martin greet guests at the entrance like some twisted version of a church welcoming committee. My new name badge from Linda's salon catches the light on the passenger seat. The interview had gone well, too well. I knew your mother when she worked here, Linda had said, studying me with knowing eyes. Before she took the second job at the grocery store. The way she'd emphasized second job made me wonder how much she knew about our family's situation. Greg spots me and waves, all casual charm in his expensive suit. My hands clench the steering wheel as I remember Dad's face this morning. He'd caught me searching his home office and nearly had a breakdown. You don't understand what you're getting into, he'd pleaded. But the stack of overdue notices and threatening letters I'd found told me plenty. Miss Larkins, Greg says as I approach. Lovely evening for a chat, isn't it? He leads me through the casino floor, past rows of machines designed to hypnotize and empty pockets. I spot Dad's favorite poker table, currently occupied by someone who looks just as desperate as he must have. Greg's office is exactly what you'd expect. All leather and mahogany, trying too hard to look legitimate. He gestures to a chair across from his desk. Your father's quite the player, he says, pouring himself a drink. Started small, but ambition got the better of him. Know what his tell is? I stay silent. He tugs his wedding ring when he's bluffing. Ironic, isn't it? the symbol of his family commitments giving away his betrayal of them. How much does he owe you? Greg slides a folder across the desk. Inside is a stack of IOUs and loan agreements, all signed in my father's shaky handwriting. The total makes me feel sick. That's not possible, I whisper. Our house isn't even worth that much. No, it's not, Greg agrees. Which is why I'm talking to you instead of the police or my usual debt collectors. I'm offering you a job. I laugh, harsh and hollow. I already have a job. At Linda's salon? Please. He leans forward. You're studying finance. You're smart. I need someone like you handling my books. Someone who understands. Family loyalty. You want me to cook your books. I want to give you a chance to save your father. And your mother. Did you know she's trying to remortgage the house? My blood runs cold. Leave her out of this. I'm not the one who dragged her into it. He stands, walking to the window overlooking the casino floor. Your father did that when he started stealing from her paychecks to fund his habit. The revelation hits like a physical blow. All those times Mom seemed confused about her bank balance, the extra shifts she kept taking. I'll give you 3 days to decide, Greg says. After that, I have to pursue other methods of collection. Oh, and Harper. His smile doesn't reach his eyes. Don't bother going to the police. They're already on my payroll. Outside, the night air feels thick and suffocating. My phone shows 3 missed calls from Jake and a text from Mom asking where I am. As I reach for my car door, a hand grabs my arm. Harper, wait. It's Dad, wild-eyed and disheveled. What did he say to you? You shouldn't be here. I wrench away from him. Like you shouldn't be here? Are you following me now? I'm trying to protect you. By stealing from Mom? The words explode out of me. By gambling away everything we have. His face crumples. I can fix this. I just need one more chance. No. My voice is steady despite the trembling in my hands. You need help. Real help. Either you tell Mom everything tomorrow, or I will. I leave him standing there under the neon lights, looking small and broken. In my rearview mirror, I see Greg watching from his office window, and I realize I've just made the situation infinitely more complicated. But maybe that's exactly what I needed to do. My first week at Linda's salon taught me more about my family's secrets than 23 years of living with them. Turns out everyone gets honest in a hair chair, especially about other people's business. Your mother used to work double shifts here, Linda mentions while counting out my first paycheck. Even after that incident with Greg Martin's wife. I nearly dropped the appointment book. What incident? Linda's expression shifts, realizing she's said too much. Ancient history, dear. Though it might explain why Ellen left so suddenly. She busies herself with the register, but I catch her watching me in the mirror. My phone buzzes. Greg's 3-day deadline ends tomorrow. I've been dodging his calls, but the weight of his offer sits heavy in my stomach. The salon's front door chimes and Mom walks in. Harper. She stops short, confusion crossing her face. You're working here? Started Monday. I say, trying to sound casual. Why didn't you tell me you used to work here? Before she can answer, Linda emerges from the back. Ellen. What a surprise. Their smiles don't quite reach their eyes. Just dropping off some paperwork for Harper's financial aid. Mom says, clutching her purse like a shield. I didn't know. That I'd hire your daughter? Linda's tone is carefully neutral. History doesn't always have to repeat itself. The tension in the room thickens. Mom's hands are shaking slightly as she sets an envelope on my desk. I'll see you at home, sweetheart. I catch up to her in the parking lot. Mom, wait. What really happened here? She turns, and for the first time, I see something like anger in her eyes. Ask your father about Martha Martin. He seems to be spending plenty of time with her husband lately. The pieces click together like a terrible puzzle. Martha Martin, Greg's wife. Dad's gambling. Mom's sudden career changes. There's more to this story than just addiction. My phone buzzes again. Jake. Need to talk. It's about Greg Martin. Important. I find him waiting at our usual campus coffee spot, looking unusually serious. Remember how I said my cousin worked security at River Rock? He leans forward, lowering his voice. He kept records. The casino's just a front. Greg's running something bigger, and your dad's caught in the middle. What kind of records? Money laundering, mostly. But there's more. He slides a USB drive across the table. Your mom's name is in here too, from 7 years ago. Something about a cover-up involving Martha Martin's accident. My coffee goes cold as Jake explains what he's found. Each detail makes the knot in my stomach tighter. Mom wasn't just a salon worker who quit. She was a witness. To what exactly? The salon's phone rings just as I'm returning from lunch. It's Greg. Time's up, Harper. Have you considered my offer? I watch Linda through the window, showing a client her new hairstyle. 7 years ago, she was here when whatever happened with Martha Martin went down. She knows something. I have a counter-proposal, I say, surprising myself. Meet me tomorrow. Same place, same time. And bring Martha. Greg's laugh is sharp. You're playing a dangerous game. No, I'm ending one. Either show up with your wife, or I take everything my friend's cousin documented to the FBI. The line goes silent for a moment. You're more like your mother than I thought, he finally says. Fine. Tomorrow night. I hang up and turn to find Linda standing behind me. Be careful, she says softly. Martha Martin's accident wasn't an accident. And your mother. She pauses, choosing her words carefully. Ellen did what she had to do to protect her family. Just like you're doing now. My phone lights up with a text from Dad. Don't trust Greg. Or Linda. Some debts aren't about money. I stare at the message, realizing I'm caught in a web that was spun long before I discovered that empty bank account. Tomorrow night, I'll finally learn the truth. About Dad's gambling, Mom's secrets, and what really happened to Martha Martin. But something tells me the answers might cost more than just money. Jake's apartment feels like the only safe place left in town. He's spreading printouts across his coffee table, bank statements, security logs, and what looks like medical records. The USB drive contained more than just casino records. Martha Martin's accident report doesn't add up, he says, highlighting dates. She was admitted to the hospital the same night your mom quit the salon. But look at this. He points to a bank transfer. 2 days later, a large sum moved from Greg's account to your parents'. My hands shake as I pick up the hospital report. Mom said she was just a witness. To what though? Jake runs his fingers through his hair, a nervous habit I've grown to recognize. Harper, there's something else. My cousin. He disappeared 3 months ago, right after he copied these files. A knock at the door makes us both jump. Through the peephole, I see Linda, looking more disheveled than I've ever seen her. Your mother's in trouble, she says when I open the door. Greg knows you have the files. He's at your house right now. My phone shows 5 missed calls from Mom. The last voicemail is just background noise and what sounds like arguing. What really happened 7 years ago? I demand. The truth this time. Linda sinks into Jake's armchair, suddenly looking every bit her age. Martha found out about Greg's operation. She came to the salon that night, threatening to expose everything. Your mother tried to calm her down, but Greg showed up. Things got heated. And the accident wasn't supposed to be fatal. Linda's voice cracks. Greg only meant to scare her, but Martha hit her head. Your mother helped clean up the scene. Greg promised to leave your family alone if she stayed quiet. But he didn't, Jake says, connecting the dots. He started gambling with your dad to keep control over your family. My phone buzzes, a text from Greg. Time to finish what your mother started. Bring the files to the salon. Now. I have to go, I say, gathering the papers. Jake grabs my arm. Harper, wait. This isn't just about money anymore. These people are dangerous. They've been dangerous for 7 years. I pull away. And my parents have been paying for it. Then let me help, he pleads. My uncle's a federal agent. One call. And what happens to my mom? She helped cover up a death, Jake. Linda stands. I'm coming with you. I was there that night too. It's time we both faced our part in this. My phone buzzes again. Dad, don't come home. Get somewhere safe. I'm handling it, but I can't run anymore. 7 years of secrets and lies have torn my family apart. Mom's silence. Dad's gambling. All of it connected to one night at the salon. Jake, I say, turning back to him. If you don't hear from me in an hour, call your uncle. Send him everything. He steps closer, and for a moment I think he might try to stop me. Instead, he kisses me, quick and desperate. I'm giving you 30 minutes. Then I'm calling, with or without your permission. The drive to the salon feels surreal. Linda sits beside me, clutching her purse like it contains secrets of its own. Maybe it does. Your mother was trying to protect Martha that night, she says quietly. Greg was the one who pushed her. We all just watched it happen, then helped him cover it up. I park behind the salon, where Mom's car sits empty. Through the windows, I can see movement inside, shadows playing across the darkened shop. Whatever happens, Linda says as we approach the door, remember that sometimes the worst choices come from the best intentions. I think about Dad's gambling, Mom's silence, and all the lies told to protect me from this moment. About Jake's kiss and his 30-minute deadline. About Martha Martin, who died because she tried to expose the truth. My hand reaches for the door handle. It's time to finish what started 7 years ago, one way or another. The salon's bell chimes as we enter, but it's not the cheerful sound I remember from my shifts. Mom sits in one of the styling chairs, her hands folded in her lap like she's waiting for a haircut. Only the man standing behind her isn't holding scissors, he's holding a gun. Right on time, Greg says, emerging from the back office. Linda, you're looking well. Harper, the files. I clutch the USB drive, aware of Jake's 30-minute deadline ticking away. Let her go first. That's not how this works. Greg gestures to a chair. Sit. We're going to have a family meeting. Harper, baby, just go, Mom pleads. This isn't your fight. It became my fight when Dad gambled away my future. My voice cracks. When you chose protecting a murderer over protecting your family. Greg laughs, but it's hollow. Is that what Linda told you? That I murdered Martha? He pulls out his phone, plays a video. The salon 7 years ago. Martha Martin screaming at Mom, waving papers. Dad trying to intervene. A push, a fall, blood spreading across the floor. Your father pushed her, Greg says softly. Trying to protect your mother. I just helped clean up his mess. For a price. The world tilts sideways. I grab the styling chair for support. You're lying. Ask them. Greg gestures to Mom and Linda. Their silence is deafening. All these years, I whisper, the gambling, the secrets. It wasn't addiction, was it? It was blackmail. Harper. Dad's voice makes me jump. He's standing in the doorway, looking older than I've ever seen him. I'm sorry. I never meant. Enough reunions, Greg cuts in. The files, Harper. Now. A phone rings, mine. Jake's 30 minutes are up. Greg's man presses the gun harder against Mom's head. Choose carefully, Greg says. Your mother kept quiet for 7 years to protect your father. What will you do to protect them both? My hands shake as I reach for my phone. Jake's name flashes on the screen, along with a text. FBI en route. Stall him. The truth is worth something, right? I say to Greg, trying to keep my voice steady. What if I could offer you more than just these files? Harper, don't, Linda steps forward. There's something you don't know. A gunshot drowns out her words. For a terrible moment, I think Mom's been shot. But it's Greg clutching his shoulder, blood seeping through his expensive suit. Behind him stands Martha Martin, very much alive, holding a smoking gun. 7 years of hiding, she says. Watching you destroy this family like you tried to destroy mine. It ends tonight. Chaos erupts. Greg's man turns his gun toward Martha. Dad tackles him. The gun skids across the floor, stopping at my feet. Through the window, I see flashing lights approaching. Harper. Jake's voice outside. Police sirens wailing. I pick up the gun with numb fingers. Point it at Greg, who's laughing despite his wound. Like mother, like daughter, he gasps. Ellen couldn't pull the trigger either. That's why Tom had to step in. No. I say, understanding finally clicking into place. Mom couldn't pull the trigger because she was protecting Martha. The blood in the video, it was fake. You helped her disappear. Mom stands slowly, moves to Martha's side. We all did. To gather evidence, to stop Greg's operation. Until tonight, the FBI bursts in, Jake's uncle leading the charge. As they read rights and secure the scene, I watch my family. The lies, the sacrifices, the secrets all laid bare under fluorescent lights. Jake pulls me into his arms, and I finally let the gun fall. I got your scholarship letter, he whispers. Full ride to Stanford. I can't leave. I start, but Mom cuts me off. Yes, you can. She takes my hand. We protected you for 7 years. Now it's time for you to live your life. Dad nods from where he's giving his statement. No more secrets, he promises. No more debts. But as they lead Greg away, I realize some debts can never be repaid. And some secrets protect more than they harm. The question is, which kind of secret am I keeping by not telling them about the second USB drive? The one with evidence that goes far beyond just Greg's operation? The second USB drive feels heavy in my pocket as I walk into the federal building. Jake's uncle, Agent Rivers, looks up from his desk, his expression grim. You're sure about this? He asks, gesturing to the chair across from him. I place the drive on his desk. There's more than just Greg's operation on here. Names, dates, transactions going back 15 years. Politicians, judges. People who could make life very difficult for your family if this gets out, he finishes. Have you told Jake? No. The word tastes like betrayal. He thinks it's over. They all do. My phone buzzes, a text from Mom. Where are you? The DA wants to meet about Greg's plea deal. They're offering Greg 5 years, Agent Rivers says, reading my expression. In exchange for names. But not the names on this drive. The elevator dings and Jake steps out. My heart stops when I see his face, he knows. My cousin didn't disappear, he says quietly. They killed him for these files, didn't they? Before I can answer, the building's power cuts out. Emergency lights flicker on, casting everything in red shadows. Agent Rivers reaches for his gun, but the elevator's already opening again. Greg Martin walks out, flanked by 2 men in suits. Not prison guards, lawyers. Miss Larkins, he says, smiling like we're meeting for coffee. Shall we discuss your father's real role in all this? Harper, don't, Jake warns, but I'm already standing. What's left to discuss? You're going to prison. Greg laughs. For what? A staged death? A gambling operation? Please. He holds up his phone, showing a video. This is from last night. Your father, making a very interesting deposit at a very interesting location. The timestamp shows 3 a.m. Dad, entering a storage facility with a briefcase. The same facility listed in the files as a money laundering hub. He's working with us, Agent Rivers says sharply. Under protection. Is he? Greg's smile widens. Or is he protecting someone else? Linda Carter, perhaps? Martha Martin? So many secrets, Harper. Sure you know which ones to keep. My phone buzzes again. Dad, don't trust the FBI. River Rock was never about gambling. The scholarship offer. I say, understanding clicking into place. Stanford. That wasn't random, was it? Smart girl. Your father's not the only one with friends in high places. Greg steps closer. Walk away now. Take the scholarship. Let the grown-ups handle their own messes. Jake moves to my side, his hand finding mine. Harper, we need to go. Now. But I'm watching Agent Rivers, who hasn't lowered his gun. Who's aiming it not at Greg, but at the emergency exit where Linda and Martha just appeared. The salon was never just a salon, Linda says, her voice steady. It was a front like the casino. But we were gathering evidence while Greg gathered money. And now? I ask, though I already know. Now we finish it, Martha says, pulling out a flash drive of her own. The real records. The ones your father helped us compile for the past 7 years. Greg's smile finally falters. You really think? The building's power returns with a hum. The elevator opens one more time. Mom steps out, followed by Dad and a team of actual federal agents. It's done, Mom says. The real FBI just raided the storage facility. All of it, Greg. Every record, every account. I pull the second USB drive from my pocket, hold it up. Including these. The ones Jake's cousin died protecting. The ones that prove who really runs River Rock. Greg lunges, but Jake moves faster, tackling him as agents swarm in. In the chaos, Dad reaches me first. I'm sorry, he whispers. For letting you think. For not trusting you with the truth. We all did what we had to. I say, watching Greg being led away. But no more secrets? No more secrets, Mom promises, joining us. The Stanford acceptance letter still sits in my bag, offering an escape. But as Jake returns to my side as Linda and Martha begin giving their statements, I realize some things are worth staying for. Some debts can only be repaid by facing them head-on. 6 months after Greg Martin's arrest, I'm standing in front of Linda's salon again. The for sale sign came down yesterday, replaced by a grand reopening banner. Martha's idea, turning it into a legitimate business, finally. Ready? Jake asks, squeezing my hand. He's wearing a suit for the first time since the federal building showdown, looking almost as nervous as my dad. Inside, the salon buzzes with activity. Mom's teaching Martha's daughter how to work the register. Linda's arranging flowers, pretending she isn't crying. And Dad's hanging a framed newspaper article about River Rock's collapse, right next to my Stanford acceptance letter. I decided to defer for a year. Some things are worth the wait. The last of Greg's associates took a plea deal this morning, Dad says when he spots me. He looks younger somehow, despite everything. The whole network's gone. Almost, I correct him, thinking of the names still hidden on that second drive. The ones too powerful to touch. Yet, the bell chimes, and Agent Rivers walks in with a familiar envelope. Final immunity agreements, he announces. Once these are signed, it's officially over. Mom's hand shakes as she signs her name. 7 years of secrets erased with a pen stroke. Dad goes next, then Linda and Martha. When it's my turn, I hesitate. Harper. Jake's voice carries a question. I've been offered an internship, I say, with the Financial Crimes Division, starting next summer. The pen hovers over paper as I watch their reactions. Mom's pride. Dad's concern. Jake's understanding smile. Like mother, like daughter, Linda murmurs. Always choosing the harder path. Speaking of paths, Jake clears his throat. I got the transfer approval. Stanford's engineering program said yes. The pen drops, forgotten. You're coming with me? Someone has to keep you from turning every accounting irregularity into a federal case, he teases. Dad picks up the pen, hands it back to me. Sign it, sweetheart. The past is past. But as I write my name, I think about Greg's last words at his sentencing. About power and secrets, and how some debts can never truly be settled. About the flash drive I kept, encrypted with evidence against those still untouched by justice. The salon fills with customers, real ones this time. Martha's daughter masters the register. Linda shares gossip that doesn't hide criminal conspiracies. Mom and Dad hold hands when they think no one's looking. I have something for you, Jake says later, as we're closing up. He pulls out a small box. Inside is a key. My cousin's apartment in Palo Alto. He left it to me in his will. Said someone would need it someday to finish the job. Jake, I know what you're planning, he cuts me off. With the evidence you kept, the names you're still investigating. Just promise me one thing. What? Promise you won't do it alone this time. Through the window, I watch my family, broken and healing, secrets turn to strength. The salon lights paint everything in warm colors, so different from that night 6 months ago. Actually, I say, I have a better idea. I pull out my phone, show him the email I received this morning. A job offer from a new task force, specifically targeting financial corruption in private institutions. The kind of institutions named in those encrypted files. They're offering positions for 2, I tell him. 1 financial analyst, 1 computer security expert. His grin tells me everything I need to know. Mom calls us back inside for a toast. As Linda raises her glass, I realize some secrets aren't burdens to bear, but foundations to build upon. Some debts aren't meant to be repaid, but transformed into something stronger. To new beginnings, Linda announces. An old promise is kept, I add, meeting Jake's eyes. The salon bell chimes one last time as we lock up for the night. Tomorrow, we'll start writing our own story. But tonight, we celebrate the end of one chapter and the quiet promise of the next. After all, justice, like revenge, is a long game, and I've learned from the best how to play it.
I never thought I'd be the type of person to snoop through my husband's pockets, but there I was, standing in our walk-in closet at 11:30 at night, holding a crumpled receipt that made my stomach turn. My name is Marlo, and until 10 minutes ago, I was just a normal nurse practitioner with a seemingly perfect life. 20 years of marriage, a beautiful daughter, and a husband who still brought me coffee every morning. At least, that's what I thought I had. The receipt was from Le Petit Jardin, one of those fancy French restaurants downtown where you need reservations months in advance. $280 for dinner for 2, including a bottle of Chateau Margaux. Ethan and I hadn't been there since our 10th anniversary, and he knew I didn't drink red wine anymore. It triggered my migraines. Mom, Olivia's voice made me jump. I shoved the receipt into my pocket as she appeared in the doorway, already in her pajamas. What are you doing in here? Just organizing your father's dry cleaning. I lied, gesturing to the pile of suits I'd been pretending to sort. Shouldn't you be studying for your calculus test? She rolled her eyes. I'm taking a break. Dad just called. He's staying late at the office again. Some big presentation tomorrow. Of course he is. I forced a smile, though my chest felt tight. 3rd time this week. You okay, Mom? You look weird. Just tired, honey. I walked over and kissed her forehead, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. Don't stay up too late. After Olivia went back to her room, I sat on the edge of our bed, pulling out my phone. My fingers hovered over Ethan's number. But what would I say? Hey, honey, quick question. Who were you whining and dining at Le Petit Jardin last Thursday? Instead, I opened my photos and took pictures of the receipt from every angle. Something in my gut told me I might need them later. The sound of the garage door opening downstairs made me jump again. I quickly returned the receipt to Ethan's jacket pocket, exactly how I'd found it. Marlo? His voice carried up the stairs, followed by his footsteps. You still up? I grabbed a random book from my nightstand and pretended to read just as he walked in, his tie loosened and hair slightly disheveled. He looked exhausted, but there was something else, a lightness in his movements that seemed out of place for someone who'd been working late. How was the presentation prep? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Brutal. He loosened his tie completely. Marketing's really pushing for this new campaign. You know how it goes. I did know how it went. I'd heard this explanation so many times lately, I could probably recite it in my sleep. You should have seen the dinner they ordered in, he continued, heading for the shower. Chinese takeout from that place on 5th. Not exactly Le Petit Jardin, but it did the job. My hand clenched around my book. He was lying so smoothly, I almost doubted myself. Almost. Dad. Olivia appeared again, this time with her calculus book. Can you help me with this problem? Mom's hopeless at math. Sure, princess. He smiled at her. That special smile he reserved just for our daughter. Let me grab a quick shower first. As they chatted about her homework, I watched them, feeling like I was seeing them through glass. When had I become the outsider in my own family? Later that night, as Ethan slept soundly beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The receipt felt like it was burning a hole in my brain. Tomorrow, I decided I would make a call to Tommy Hayes. We'd gone to high school together, and now he was a private investigator. I'd looked him up months ago, when I first started noticing something was off, but had talked myself out of it. Not this time. This time, I needed to know the truth, even if it destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life. Tommy's office looked exactly like I'd expected. Cheap coffee maker in the corner, manila folders everywhere, and blinds that had seen better days. What I hadn't expected was how nervous I'd be, sitting across from someone I used to share algebra notes with, asking him to investigate my husband. You sure about this, Marlo? Tommy leaned back in his chair, looking more distinguished than he had in high school, despite the coffee stains on his tie. Once we start digging, we might find things you can't unknow. I pulled out my phone and showed him the receipt photos. I'm already finding things I can't unknow. At least this way, I'll have the whole truth. He nodded, studying the images. The restaurant's interesting. It's right across from Collins Marketing, where Ethan works. Popular spot for their executives. How do you know that? Had a case there last year. CEO's daughter works there too. Young hotshot named Jenna Collins. Real ambitious type. Something about the way he said it made my stomach clench. Before I could ask more, my phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Going to Dad's office after school. Working on college apps with his new marketing assistant. Don't wait up. Hongxing. Everything okay? Tommy asked, noticing my expression. My daughter's been spending a lot of time at Ethan's office lately. Says she's getting career advice. I looked up at Tommy. How much do you charge? We spent the next hour working out the details. As I wrote the check, I tried not to think about how this money was supposed to go toward Olivia's summer program. That evening, I made Ethan's favorite lasagna, hoping to coax some family time out of what felt like increasingly separate lives. The kitchen filled with familiar smells, but something felt off, like trying to recreate a photograph where everyone's smiling. But you can't remember what the joke was. Olivia breezed in around 7, practically glowing. Mom, you'll never believe it. Jenna's helping me with my marketing internship application. She's amazing. She went to Stanford too, just like where I want to go. Jenna? I kept my voice steady, though my hands shook slightly as I plated the food. That's your dad's new assistant? Well, she's more like junior executive now. Dad says she's the youngest person they've ever promoted so fast. Olivia grabbed her plate, already heading for the stairs. Can I eat in my room? I have to finish this application. Actually, I thought we could eat together tonight. As a family. I looked at her hopefully. Your father should be home soon. She rolled her eyes. Mom, this is important. It's my future. You're always saying I need to focus on college stuff. I know, but let her work, honey. Ethan's voice startled me. I hadn't heard him come in. He kissed my cheek, but his cologne smelled different, sweeter, more floral. That's my girl, always hustling. Olivia beamed at him before disappearing upstairs. I watched Ethan loosen his tie, noting how he seemed more energized than usual after a long day. How's the new assistant working out? I asked casually, serving his plate. Jenna? She's great. Real go-getter. He took a bite of lasagna. This is good, but did you use a different recipe? Tastes different. Same recipe as always. I set my fork down, suddenly not hungry. You're just not home for dinner much anymore to remember what it tastes like. He looked up, something flickering in his eyes before his phone buzzed. He checked it, smiling slightly at the screen. Sorry, work thing, he muttered, typing rapidly. On a private number? The words slipped out before I could stop them. His head snapped up. What? Nothing. I stood, gathering my barely touched dinner. I'm tired. Think I'll turn in early. Later, lying in bed, I heard Ethan and Olivia laughing downstairs, sharing some private joke. My phone lit up with a text from Tommy. Found something. Meet tomorrow? I typed back, yes, with trembling fingers, then deleted our conversation thread. Rolling over, I noticed Ethan's side of the bed was still empty, though it was nearly midnight. Downstairs, I could hear him on the phone, speaking too softly for me to make out the words. Sleep didn't come easily that night, but determination did. Tomorrow, I'd start getting answers, whether I wanted them or not. The manila envelope sat between us on Tommy's desk like a live grenade. His face told me everything I needed to know before he even opened it. Maybe you should sit down for this, Marlo. I remained standing. Just show me. He spread out the photos one by one. Ethan and a young woman, stunning, probably mid-20s, having lunch at Le Petit Jardin. The same pair walking through the park, his hand on the small of her back. Another at a hotel bar, leaning close, laughing at some private joke. That's Jenna Collins, Tommy said quietly. CEO's daughter. But there's more. The next photo made my knees buckle. Olivia was there, sitting with them at an outdoor cafe, looking more relaxed than I'd seen her in months. They looked like a family, the kind that shares inside jokes and doesn't worry about college applications or curfews. How long? My voice sounded strange, distant. Based on credit card records, hotel bookings, about 8 months. Tommy hesitated. Olivia started showing up in the surveillance about 6 weeks ago. I picked up the cafe photo, studying my daughter's face. She knows. She's known all along. There's something else. Tommy pulled out his phone, playing a video. It was Olivia and Jenna shopping, trying on dresses and taking selfies together. They've been spending a lot of time together. Jenna's been mentoring her, I guess you could say. The reality hit me like a physical blow. Not only was my husband sleeping with another woman, but my daughter had chosen her too. They'd built a whole separate life while I was working extra shifts at the hospital, thinking I was providing for our family's future. I need to go. I gathered the photos with shaking hands. Marlo, wait. Tommy caught my arm. There's more evidence if you need it for the divorce. Divorce? I repeated the word, testing how it felt. 17 years of marriage reduced to a legal term. I drove aimlessly for hours, the envelope burning a hole in my passenger seat. Every red light brought another memory. Ethan teaching Olivia to ride a bike, family vacations where we'd stay up late playing board games. The way he used to bring me coffee in bed every Sunday morning. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Having dinner with Dad and Jenna to discuss internship stuff. Don't wait up. 2 hearts. I pulled over, my vision blurring. The casual way she'd written Jenna's name. Like she wasn't the woman destroying our family. Like this was normal. Without thinking, I drove to Collins Marketing. The building was mostly dark except for a few offices. I spotted them through the window of the top-floor restaurant. Ethan, Jenna, and Olivia, laughing over what looked like dessert. Jenna was showing Olivia something on her phone while Ethan watched them both with undisguised affection.
My phone buzzed again.
Ethan this time. Working late. Don't hold dinner. The lie was so casual, so practiced. How many times had I read similar messages and believed them? How many family dinners had I kept warm, only to wrap them up and put them away untouched? I watched as Jenna touched Ethan's arm, leaving her hand there longer than necessary. Olivia didn't even blink. This was her normal now. They were building memories without me, creating inside jokes I'd never understand, sharing moments I couldn't reclaim. The tears finally came, hot and angry. I thought about the college fund I'd been building for Olivia since she was born, the extra shifts I'd picked up to make sure she could go anywhere she wanted. All while she was planning her future with the woman who'd stolen her father. My phone buzzed one more time. Tommy, there's more if you want to see it. But maybe what you need isn't more evidence. Maybe it's a plan. I wiped my eyes, looking up at the happy scene in the restaurant window. They hadn't noticed me sitting here, hadn't spared a thought for where I was or what I was doing. Well, they'd notice soon enough. I started my car, my mind already spinning with possibilities. They wanted to play happy families? Fine. But first, they were going to learn what it felt like to lose everything they took for granted. Starting with that college fund. The real estate agent's smile never wavered as she showed me around the empty medical office space. "It's perfect for a wellness clinic," she said, gesturing to the large windows overlooking downtown. Previous tenant was a chiropractor, so all the basic infrastructure is here. I walked through the rooms, mentally placing equipment, imagining the possibilities. For 15 years, I dreamed about opening my own holistic healthcare practice. Now, Olivia's college fund sat in my account, waiting to be redirected. My phone buzzed, another text from her. "Got the Stanford interview. Jenna's helping me prep this weekend. She's seriously the best." I closed the message, without responding. Let Jenna help her practice for interviews she'd never get to attend. "The lease terms are quite favorable," the agent continued. "And the location." "I'll take it," I interrupted. "When can I move in?" Later that afternoon, I sat in my car outside the bank, staring at the withdrawal slip in my hands. 17 years of extra shifts and careful saving, all about to be transformed into something else entirely. My finger hovered over Olivia's number, some maternal instinct still wanting to warn her, to give her one last chance. Instead, I called Tommy. "You sure about this?" he asked after I explained my plan. "Using the college fund, that's not something you can undo. They're already planning her future without me," I said, watching people stream in and out of the bank. "Why shouldn't I plan mine without them?" "Because you're better than they are." His voice was gentle but firm. "And because there might be another way." "What do you mean?" I did some digging into Colin's marketing. Seems Jenna's been moving company funds around, making some questionable investments. If Ethan's involved. "He is," I cut in. "He handles all their major accounts." "Then maybe instead of burning your daughter's future, we could." A knock on my car window made me jump. Ethan stood there, looking concerned. I quickly ended the call. "Everything okay?" he asked as I rolled down the window. "I saw your car from the coffee shop." "Fine," I said, trying to hide the withdrawal slip. "Just running errands." His eyes caught the bank logo. "Is this about Olivia's college fund? Because I've been meaning to talk to you about that. I think we should let her use some of it for that summer program Jenna recommended." The casual way he said her name, like she had any right to make decisions about our daughter's future, made something snap inside me. "Actually," I said, stepping out of the car, "I was thinking of investing it differently." "What do you mean?" I pointed to the empty medical office across the street. "I'm opening my own clinic." His face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, anger. "That's Olivia's money." "For Stanford." "No, it's my money. From my extra shifts and overtime. While you were having dinner with your girlfriend." The color drained from his face. "Marlo, don't." I held up my hand. "Just don't. You and Jenna can figure out how to pay for Stanford. I'm sure with all that marketing money floating around, you'll find a way." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You've been investigating me." "Investigating you?" I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. "I didn't need to investigate you, Ethan. You and Jenna did a pretty good job of flaunting everything yourselves. Even got our daughter involved in the performance." He grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. "Whatever you think you know." "I know enough." I pulled away. "And soon, everyone else will too." Walking into the bank, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Behind me, I could see Ethan on his phone, probably warning Jenna. Let them worry. Let them wonder what else I knew about their creative accounting. I filled out the withdrawal slip with steady hands, ready to invest in my own future for once. They'd taken my family, my trust, my daughter's loyalty. But they couldn't take this moment of choosing myself, of turning betrayal into opportunity. The teller smiled as she processed the transaction. Would you like a receipt? Yes, I said, thinking of that first restaurant receipt that started it all. I definitely want to keep track of everything. I spread the photos across our dining room table like a twisted family album. Each one told its own story. Ethan and Jenna's secret dates, Olivia's complicit smiles, their perfect little world that didn't include me. The front door opened just as I placed Tommy's financial records beside them. Mom, Olivia called out. Dad's car is here, but he's not. She stopped dead when she saw the display. What is this? Where's your father? My voice sounded calmer than I felt. He's picking up Jenna. We're supposed to discuss my internship. Her eyes locked on a photo of the three of them laughing at Le Petit Jardin. You've been spying on us? Spying implies you were trying to hide something. I picked up one of the financial documents. Though I suppose your father and Jenna were hiding quite a bit. The front door opened again. Ethan's voice carried through the house, followed by a feminine laugh that made my skin crawl. Olivia? Your mom's car is here. Ethan froze in the doorway, Jenna nearly bumping into him from behind. Perfect timing, I said, watching their faces as they took in the scene. I thought we could all have a family discussion about creative accounting and college funds. Jenna stepped forward, her confidence wavering. Marlo, I can explain. Can you explain why my daughter calls you for advice instead of me? I pushed a photo toward her. Or why you're playing mother to my child while sleeping with my husband? That's enough. Ethan moved between us, but I noticed how he positioned himself slightly closer to Jenna. Olivia, go to your room.
No.
I stood up. She stays. She should hear how her perfect mentor has been embezzling company funds to finance her lifestyle. How her father's been helping cover it up. You don't know what you're talking about, Ethan snapped, but his eyes darted to the financial records. Don't I? I turned to Olivia. Did they tell you where your internship funding was really coming from? Or how that summer program they promised you might disappear when the audit hits? Olivia's face paled. What audit? The one Tommy's evidence triggered this morning. I watched Jenna's composed facade crack. Funny how quickly the SEC responds to whistleblowers. You had no right. Ethan's voice shook with rage. This isn't just about us anymore. You're destroying everything. No, you destroyed everything. I slammed my hand on the table, sending photos scattering. You destroyed our family the moment you chose her. And you. I turned to Olivia. You chose them too. Well, guess what? I'm choosing me. Mom, please. Olivia's voice cracked. We can fix this. Fix what? The fact that you've been lying to me for months? That you helped them hide their affair? My laugh sounded hollow. Or maybe you want to fix the fact that I used your college fund to start my own business? The silence was deafening. Olivia stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. You did what? Ethan stepped forward, but Jenna grabbed his arm. We should go, she whispered urgently. If there's really an audit. Running already? I picked up my phone. Should I call your father now, Jenna? Tell him how his daughter and his star executive have been cooking his books. Mom, stop. Olivia was crying now. This isn't you. No. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw the fear in her eyes. Not fear of the situation, but fear of me. Maybe you don't know who I am anymore. Just like I don't know who you are. Jenna pulled Ethan toward the door, whispering frantically about damage control. Olivia stood frozen between us, tears streaming down her face. Choose carefully, Olivia, I said quietly. Because this time, there's no going back. She looked between me and her father, who was already following Jenna out. In that moment, I saw her make her choice. As she ran after them, I sat back down at the table, surrounded by the evidence of my destroyed family. The front door slammed, and the house fell silent. I picked up my phone and dialed Tommy's number. It's done, I said when he answered. Now, let's finish what they started. The line went quiet for a moment before Tommy responded. Marlo, are you sure this is what you want? I looked at the empty doorway where my family had stood moments ago. Want?
No.
But it's what they deserve. The news about Colin's Marketing's financial scandal broke on a Wednesday. By Friday, my clinic's waiting room furniture had arrived, and Olivia had blocked my number. I watched the movers arrange chairs while my phone buzzed with another call from Tommy, probably warning me again about how my revenge plan had spiraled too far. I let it go to voicemail. The local business journal's headline glared from my laptop. Colin's Marketing under federal investigation. CEO's daughter and senior executive named in probe. Below was a photo of Ethan and Jenna leaving the federal building, his hand protectively on her back, the same gesture I'd seen in Tommy's surveillance photos. My phone buzzed again. This time, an unknown number. Is this what you wanted? Jenna's voice was raw. To destroy everyone? I sat on one of the newly delivered chairs, watching the movers struggle with the reception desk. You seemed pretty good at destruction yourself. They're freezing my accounts. The SEC is. She took a shaky breath. Olivia's summer program deposit? The internship? It's all gone. Funny how actions have consequences. She's devastated. She thinks she's lost everything, her future, her father, and now you. Don't you dare talk to me about my daughter. My voice cracked. You took her from me long before any of this. No, Marlo. You pushed her away with your rules and expectations. She paused. We gave her what you couldn't. The truth in her words stung worse than any lie. I hung up, hands shaking. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number, Olivia, using Ethan's phone. How could you do this to us? Dad might go to jail. Everything's ruined. I hate you. The movers asked where to put the last chair, but their voices seemed distant underwater. I pointed vaguely, then escaped to my new office, empty except for a desk and the dreams I'd traded my family for. Tommy found me there hours later, sitting in the dark. You missed the evening news, he said, flipping on the lights. Jenna's father had a heart attack after the SEC interview. He's in critical condition. I looked up sharply. What? Yeah. And Olivia. He hesitated. She tried to use her emergency credit card for a hotel. The one you gave her? It was declined because of the account transfer for this place. My chest tightened. Where is she? Staying with Ethan at some budget motel. Jenna's there too. All their assets are frozen. I stood up, grabbing my keys, but Tommy blocked the door. Don't, he said gently. You'll make it worse. They're already talking to lawyers about suing you for the college fund. Let them. I sank back into my chair. I have nothing left to lose anyway. That's not true. You have this. He gestured to the empty clinic. You have a fresh start. A fresh start. I laughed bitterly. I traded my daughter's future for an empty office and some waiting room furniture. You traded lies for truth, he corrected. The rest is just collateral damage. My phone buzzed again, another news alert. Someone had leaked photos of Ethan and Jenna to the press, including ones with Olivia. The comments were brutal, calling them everything from gold diggers to homewreckers. People speculating about my daughter's role in it all. I did this, I whispered. I wanted revenge, but not this. Tommy sat across from me. There's still time to what? Fix it. I showed him Olivia's text. She hates me. My husband's facing criminal charges. A man's in the hospital. And for what? So I could prove I wasn't powerless. He started to respond, but my phone lit up again. This time, it was my lawyer. Ethan's attorney called, she said when I answered. They're not just going after the college fund. They're claiming emotional distress, defamation. It's getting ugly, Marlo. After she hung up, I stood at my office window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, my daughter was huddled in a cheap motel room. Her world collapsed around her. Because of me. Because I'd chosen revenge over redemption. What have I done? I whispered to my reflection in the dark glass. What have I become? The call came at 3 a.m, 2 weeks after the scandal broke. I almost didn't answer, but something made me grab my phone on the last ring. Mom, Olivia's voice was barely a whisper. I need help. I sat up, instantly alert. Where are you? The Sunset Motel on Highway 9, room 115. A pause, then, please hurry. I found her sitting on the curb outside the motel, a small duffel bag at her feet. Her hair was unwashed, her Stanford sweatshirt wrinkled. She looked smaller somehow, younger. They're getting married, she said as I approached. Dad and Jenna, right after his plea deal goes through. I sat beside her, careful to maintain distance. What happened? I heard them talking about how the marriage might help their case, make it look more legitimate. She wiped her eyes. They didn't know I was awake. Jenna said. She said I was useful for making everything look normal. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice neutral. And your father? He agreed. Her voice cracked. Said I helped sell their story. Made it easier to hide everything. A door slammed somewhere in the motel. Olivia flinched. I was so stupid, she whispered. I thought Jenna really cared. That she saw something in me Dad saw, something you didn't. I saw everything in you, I said quietly. That's why I pushed so hard. Maybe too hard. She turned to me, tears streaming now. I told the FBI everything today. About the fake receipts they had me deliver, the meetings I helped cover up. They said I might have to testify. Oh, honey, Dad was so angry. He said I betrayed them, that I ruined everything. She hugged herself tightly. But they ruined everything first, didn't they? They ruined us. Before I could respond, headlights swept across the parking lot. A familiar car pulled up, Ethan's. Olivia. He stormed toward us, Jenna close behind. What did you do? I stood, positioning myself between them and my daughter. Back off, Ethan. She talked to the feds. Jenna's perfectly maintained facade had cracked, showing the desperation beneath. After everything we did for her. Everything you did for her? I laughed harshly. You used her. Both of you. That's rich, coming from you. Ethan stepped closer. You're the one who stole her college fund, who leaked those photos to the press. Actually, Tommy's voice came from behind us, making everyone jump. I leaked those. Figured if you were going down, might as well make it spectacular. He moved to stand beside me, his presence steady and calm. Got it all on video, by the way. This touching family reunion might be interesting to your lawyers. Ethan's face contorted. You haven't changed, Marlowe. Still trying to control everything, manipulate everyone. Stop it. Olivia stood up, her voice stronger than I'd heard in weeks. Just stop. I know what I did wrong, but at least I'm trying to fix it. You're still lying, still pretending this is someone else's fault. Olivia, sweetheart. Jenna reached for her, but Olivia stepped back. Don't pretend you care now. She grabbed her bag, then turned to me. Can we go home? Home. The word hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. The clinic has an apartment upstairs, I said carefully. It's small, but perfect. She cut me off, already walking toward my car. This isn't over. Ethan called after us. Actually, it is. I turned back one last time. You can have your wedding, your plea deals, your lies. But you don't get her. Not anymore. In the car, Olivia stared straight ahead as we pulled away. I'm sorry, she whispered, for everything. Me too. I reached over and squeezed her hand. But maybe we can start over. Do better this time. She nodded, then asked quietly, the clinic, does it need any help? Like, maybe a part-time receptionist while I take some community college classes? For the first time in months, I felt something like hope. I think we might have an opening. Behind us, the motel's neon sign flickered and died, leaving only darkness in our rearview mirror. 6 months later, I stood in my clinic's waiting room, watching Olivia arrange fresh flowers at the reception desk. The morning sun caught her hair, reminding me of when she was little, how it would shine like copper in the light. First patients in 15 minutes, she said, checking the computer. Mrs. Chun for her follow-up. I nodded, remembering how nervous I'd been about our first patients. Now we had a steady stream of regulars, people who trusted us with their healing. The irony wasn't lost on me. how I'd found my way to helping others heal while trying to mend my own wounds. The mail cart rattled by outside, and Olivia went to collect our deliveries. She returned with a stack of envelopes, one of them cream-colored and expensive-looking. "It's from Jenna," she said quietly, holding it out. My hand trembled slightly as I took it. Ethan's sentencing had been last week, 3 years, with possibility of parole. Jenna had gotten 18 months, her testimony against the company earning her a lighter sentence. Inside was a single page of expensive stationery. "Marlo, they say revenge is best served cold, but healing needs warmth. Thank you for showing me the difference. I'm sorry for everything. Jenna. P.S. The trust fund my father set up for me? I've arranged for it to be transferred to Olivia when I start my sentence. It's not Stanford money, but it might help with community college. Consider it restitution." I looked up to find Olivia watching me, her expression uncertain. "What does it say?" Instead of answering, I handed her the letter. Watched her face as she read it, saw the complicated mix of emotions play across her features. "Mom," she set the letter down carefully. "Do you think people can really change?" I paused, considering everything that had brought us here. "I think sometimes we have to break before we can rebuild something stronger." The clinic's door chimed as Tommy walked in, carrying his usual morning coffee offering. He'd become a regular fixture here, helping with security systems and background checks for new staff. Sometimes I caught him looking at me in a way that made me wonder about second chances of a different kind. "Mrs. Chen's early," he said, setting my coffee on the reception desk. "Want me to tell her you'll be a few minutes?" "No," I smiled, watching Olivia arrange her desk for the day. "We're ready." Later that evening, as we closed up, Olivia lingered by the door. "I saw Dad yesterday," she said suddenly, "at the visitors' center." I kept counting the day's receipts, giving her space to continue. "He asked about you." "About the clinic." She twisted her keys in her hands. "I told him we're doing good, that we found our way back to each other." "And what did he say?" "That he was glad. And sorry." She looked up at me. "I didn't forgive him. Not yet. But maybe someday." I thought about Jenna's letter, about revenge and healing, about how sometimes the path forward isn't what we expect. "Someday?" I agreed, locking the cash drawer. "Ready to head upstairs?" I thought we could try that new pasta recipe. "Actually," she smiled hesitantly. "Tommy mentioned there's a new French restaurant downtown. Not as fancy as Le Petit Jardin, but..." I felt something shift in my chest, like a final piece settling into place. "Dinner out sounds perfect." As we walked to our cars, I glanced back at the clinic sign. "Green Wellness Center. Healing begins here." It wasn't the life I'd planned, but maybe it was the one we needed. "Mom," Olivia called from her car. "I love you." 3 simple words, but they held everything: forgiveness, understanding, hope. The revenge I'd sought had nearly destroyed us both, but here we were, rebuilding something new from the ashes of what we'd lost. "I love you too, honey," I called back. "See you at the restaurant." Sometimes I've learned the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's healing. It's growth. It's finding your way back to love, even when the path leads somewhere unexpected.
I was sitting at my desk, sipping lukewarm coffee and staring at the endless spreadsheets that define my life as an urban planner. It was a typical Tuesday morning, until it wasn't. The envelope, stark white and unassuming, appeared on my desk between one sip and the next. No return address, just my name, Morgan, scrawled in a hurried hand. Curiosity piqued. I tore it open, expecting maybe an anonymous complaint or some unsolicited advice about city zoning. Instead, I found photographs. My heart plummeted as I recognized Caleb, my husband, wrapped around Serena, my best friend. They were laughing, sharing a moment that was meant to be private, meant to be ours. The room spun, and I gripped the edge of my desk to steady myself. My name is Morgan, and I thought I had it all figured out. A stable job, a loving husband, and a best friend who felt like family. But life has a way of pulling the rug out from under you when you least expect it. I spent the rest of the day in a fog, the images searing into my mind. I was supposed to be resilient, analytical, someone who could sort through chaos and find order. But this was a mess I never anticipated. By the time I got home, I had replayed 1,000 scenarios in my head, each one more painful than the last. Caleb was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. The smell of his famous chili filled the room, but it turned my stomach. I watched him for a moment, trying to reconcile the man I saw in the photos with the man in front of me. He looked up, his smile faltering as he caught my expression. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. I tossed the envelope onto the counter. "Found this at work today." His eyes flicked to the photos, and I saw the color drain from his face. For a moment, I thought he might faint. Instead, he shook his head, a nervous laugh escaping his lips. "Morgan, it's not what it looks like." "Really?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Because it looks like you and Serena have been busy." He opened his mouth, closed it again. I could see the wheels turning, trying to find the right words to say. "It's complicated," he finally managed. "Complicated?" I echoed, incredulous. "That's all you've got?" He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "I swear it's not what you think. Serena and I were just what, Caleb?" I cut him off. "Friends? Because I don't have friends who do that." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched across his face. "I love you, Morgan. You know that, right?" I wanted to believe him. I wanted to cling to the life I thought we had. But the betrayal was too fresh, too raw. "I don't know anything anymore," I said, my voice breaking. We stood there, the silence stretching between us like a chasm. I could feel the weight of his fear, his desperation to hold on to the life we'd built. But I was driven by something else, a need for truth, for clarity. I needed to understand how everything had gone so wrong. Finally, I turned away, unable to look at him. "I need some time to think." I left him standing in the kitchen, the chili forgotten, the air thick with unspoken words. As I walked away, I felt a mix of emotions: anger, confusion, a deep sense of loss. But beneath it all, a spark of determination ignited. I would find out the truth, no matter what it took. That night, as I lay in bed, I replayed the confrontation over and over, searching for any hint of sincerity in Caleb's words. But all I found were more questions. How long had this been going on? Why Serena? And most importantly, who had sent the photos? As sleep finally claimed me, I resolved to get to the bottom of it. I would confront Serena, dig deeper, and uncover the truth. Because this wasn't just about betrayal, it was about justice. And I was going to make sure that everyone got what they deserved. The next day would be the beginning of a journey I never asked for, but one I was determined to see through. I spent the next morning in a daze, the events of the previous night swirling around my mind like a storm I couldn't escape. The photos haunted me, and Caleb's flimsy explanations only added to my confusion. I needed someone to talk to, someone who could help me make sense of it all. That someone was Owen. Owen and I had been friends for years. He was the kind of person who could see through the noise and get to the heart of things. I texted him, asking if we could meet for coffee. His reply was immediate and reassuring. I found myself at our usual cafe, nursing a cappuccino and waiting for him to arrive. When he walked in, his presence was like a bomb. He gave me a quick hug, his warmth cutting through the chill that had settled in my bones. "Morgan, what's going on?" he asked, concern etched in his features. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "I found out Caleb's been having an affair. With Serena." Owen's eyes widened, and I saw the shock ripple through him. "Serena? Are you sure?" I nodded, sliding the envelope across the table. He glanced at the photos, his expression darkening. "I can't believe this. How long?" "I don't know," I admitted, frustration creeping into my tone. "But I need to find out." Owen leaned back, his gaze steady. "What are you going to do?" "I'm not sure yet. Caleb's denying it, of course. But I can't just let this go." He nodded, understanding without me having to say more. "You know I'm here for you, whatever you need." His support was a lifeline, and I felt a flicker of hope in the midst of my turmoil. "Thanks, Owen. I don't know where to start." He reached across the table, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. "You'll figure it out. And if you need help, you've got me." As we talked, I noticed a change in Owen, a subtle shift in the way he looked at me. There was something deeper in his eyes, something that hinted at more than friendship. It was a glimpse of a possibility I hadn't considered, but now wasn't the time to explore it. Meanwhile, Caleb and Serena were carrying on as if nothing had happened. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to their affair, something beneath the surface that I hadn't yet uncovered. It was infuriating, the way they rationalized their actions, as if their betrayal was somehow justified. That afternoon, I decided to confront Serena. I needed to see her face, hear her side of things, even if it meant ripping open the wound a little wider. I walked into her boutique, the bell above the door chiming my arrival. She looked up from the counter, her smile faltering when she saw me. "Morgan, hey," she said, her voice too bright, too forced. "Serena," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "Can we talk?" She hesitated, glancing around the empty store. "Sure, what's up?" I cut to the chase. "I know about you and Caleb." Her face went pale, and I saw the mask slip, just for a moment. "Morgan, Save it," I interrupted, my anger bubbling to the surface. "I just want to know why." She shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting anywhere but mine. "It's complicated," she said, echoing Caleb's pathetic excuse. "Try me." She sighed, a hint of frustration in her voice. "It just happened, okay? We didn't mean for it to go this far." I laughed, a bitter sound that surprised even me. "That's supposed to make it better?" "No, I'm sorry, Morgan. I never wanted to hurt you." Her apology felt hollow, and I knew there was more she wasn't saying. But I also knew I wasn't going to get the truth from her. Not now, maybe not ever. "I guess that makes two of us," I said, turning to leave. As I walked away, I felt the weight of her gaze on my back. I knew this was only the beginning of a long, painful journey. But I also knew I wasn't alone. With Owen's support, I was determined to uncover the truth and find a way to rebuild my life. The cracks in the foundation of my world were deepening, but I wasn't going to let them break me. Not yet. The days that followed were a blur of suspicion and unease. Caleb and I existed in a tense silence, each of us tiptoeing around the other, careful not to disturb the fragile peace. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing, and I could feel it growing stronger with each passing moment. I spent hours combing through our shared life, looking for clues, for anything that might give me the answers I needed. It was during one of these late-night searches that I stumbled upon a phone I didn't recognize, tucked away in the back of Caleb's desk drawer. My heart pounded as I powered it on, my hands trembling with a mix of fear and anticipation. The messages were there, plain as day. Conversations between Caleb and Serena that left no room for doubt. They spoke in a language of intimacy and deceit that made my skin crawl. I felt a hot flush of anger and betrayal, my hands shaking as I scrolled through their words, each message a dagger to my heart. I couldn't stay in the house, not with the walls closing in around me. I grabbed my coat and slipped out into the night, the cool air hitting my face like a slap. I found myself at Naomi's door, my neighbor and friend, hoping for some clarity, some way to make sense of the chaos. Naomi opened the door, her expression shifting from surprise to concern as she took in my disheveled state. "Morgan, what's happened?" she asked, ushering me inside. I handed her the phone, unable to speak. She took it, her eyes widening as she read through the messages. "Oh, Morgan," she said softly, her voice filled with empathy. "I don't know what to do," I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. "Everything feels like it's falling apart." Naomi sat beside me, her presence a comforting anchor. "You're stronger than you think," she said, her words a balm to my fractured spirit. "But you don't have to go through this alone." Her support was a lifeline, and I clung to it, drawing strength from her unwavering belief in me. But even as I sat there, I knew I couldn't keep running. I had to face this head-on, no matter how painful it might be. The next morning, I called Caleb, asking him to meet me at the park. I needed to confront him, to hear his side of things once more, even if it meant tearing open the wound all over again. He arrived, looking worn and weary, the weight of his deceit etched into his features. "Morgan," he said, his voice tentative. I handed him the phone, watching as realization dawned on his face. "I found this," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil churning inside me. He looked up, a mixture of guilt and resignation in his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said, the words falling flat between us. "Why, Caleb?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why Serena?" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "I don't know," he admitted. "It just happened. I didn't mean for it to get this far." "That's not good enough," I replied, my anger simmering beneath the surface. "You've shattered everything we built." "For what?" His silence spoke volumes, and I realized that maybe he didn't have an answer. Maybe there was no justification for what he'd done. As we stood there, the tension between us palpable, I felt a shift within myself. The need for revenge, for justice, was still there, but it was evolving into something more, a desire for closure, for peace. I didn't want to be consumed by this betrayal. I wanted to reclaim my life, to find a way forward that didn't involve being defined by Caleb's actions. Just as I thought our conversation was drawing to a close, Caleb's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression shifting to one of panic. "I have to go," he said abruptly, turning to leave. "Caleb, wait." I called after him, but he was already walking away, his retreating figure a reminder of the distance that had grown between us. I watched him go, a new determination taking root within me. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. There were still questions that needed answers, truths that needed to be uncovered. And I was going to find them, no matter what it took. As I walked away from the park, I felt a sense of resolve settle over me. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with obstacles and challenges I couldn't yet see. But I knew one thing for sure. I was ready to face whatever came next. The days after my confrontation with Caleb were a whirlwind of emotions and decisions. I felt like I was walking a tightrope, balancing between the urge for revenge and the need to maintain some semblance of dignity. I knew that I couldn't just sit back and let this betrayal define me. I needed to take control of the situation, but how? I confided in Owen again, meeting him at a quiet corner of the park where we could speak freely. He listened intently, his eyes never leaving mine, offering a silent promise of support. "Morgan, you're handling this better than anyone could expect," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "Am I?" I asked, feeling the weight of my uncertainty. "I'm just trying to figure out what's next." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Have you thought about what you really want out of this? Is it revenge or something else?" His question lingered in the air, forcing me to confront my own motivations. I realized I didn't just want to hurt Caleb and Serena in return. I wanted to reclaim my life, to break free from the shadow of their betrayal. But how could I do that without losing myself in the process? As we talked, Owen's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his brow furrowing. "It's Naomi," he said, a hint of surprise in his voice. "She says it's urgent." I felt a flicker of apprehension. Naomi was the kind of person who didn't panic easily, so if she said it was urgent, it probably was. We made our way to her house, my mind racing with possibilities. Naomi greeted us at the door, her expression serious. "Morgan, I found something," she said, leading us to her kitchen table. There, she had laid out a series of documents, each one more damning than the last. "These are financial records," she explained. "It looks like Caleb and Serena have been funneling money from your joint account into a business venture." My heart sank as I scanned the documents. The betrayal ran deeper than I'd realized. Caleb hadn't just been unfaithful. He'd been siphoning off our savings to fund Serena's boutique. My hands trembled as I tried to process the enormity of it all. Why would they do this? I asked, more to myself than anyone else. Naomi shook her head, her eyes filled with sympathy. "I don't know, but it's clear they've been planning this for a while." The revelation hit me like a tidal wave, threatening to pull me under. But instead of succumbing to despair, I felt a surge of determination. This was the turning point I needed. I couldn't just stand by and let them get away with it. "Owen, I need your help," I said, my voice firm with resolve. "We have to gather more evidence, something undeniable." He nodded, his expression resolute. "Whatever you need, I'm here." Together, we devised a plan to gather the evidence needed to confront Caleb and Serena publicly. I knew I was treading dangerous waters, but I couldn't let them continue to manipulate and deceive me. This was about more than just revenge, it was about justice and reclaiming my life. As we left Naomi's house, I felt a shift within myself. The weight of my decisions was heavy, but I knew it was the only way forward. I had to take control, to protect not just my future, but also the truth. That night, as I lay in bed, I replayed the events of the day in my mind. The betrayal, the lies, the financial deceit, it was all so much to bear. But I realized that I wasn't alone. With Owen and Naomi by my side, I had the strength to face whatever came next. The stakes had been raised, and the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. But I was ready to confront it all, to fight for the life I deserved. This wasn't just about Caleb and Serena anymore. It was about me, about finding my own way forward and emerging stronger on the other side. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. I knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, but I was no longer afraid. I was ready to face whatever came next, and I wouldn't stop until I had the answers I needed. The community event loomed on the horizon, a ticking clock counting down to the moment I would expose Caleb and Serena for who they truly were. The plan Owen and I crafted was meticulous, each step designed to ensure that the truth would come to light. But as the day approached, I felt the pressure mounting, the weight of my decisions pressing down on me like a storm cloud ready to burst. I found myself pacing the living room, my mind racing with possibilities. What if something went wrong? What if Caleb and Serena managed to turn the tables on me? The uncertainty gnawed at me, threatening to unravel my resolve. Owen arrived, his presence a steadying force amidst the chaos. "Morgan, you look like you're about to jump out of your skin," he said, his tone light, but his eyes filled with concern. I can't shake the feeling that something's going to go wrong," I admitted, wringing my hands. He placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "We've got this. You've done everything you can to prepare. Now it's just about seeing it through." His confidence was infectious, and I felt a flicker of hope reignite within me. But even as we reviewed the plan one last time, a nagging doubt lingered. Was this really the right path? Was exposing them in such a public way truly the justice I sought? Or was it simply revenge dressed up in the guise of righteousness? The day of the event arrived, and I felt a strange calm settle over me. The community center buzzed with activity, neighbors mingling and chatting, blissfully unaware of the storm about to hit. I scanned the crowd, searching for Caleb and Serena, my heart pounding in anticipation. When they finally arrived, their smiles and easy demeanor made my stomach churn. They moved through the room, greeting friends and acquaintances, completely oblivious to the trap I had laid. I watched them, my emotions a tangled mix of anger, betrayal, and a lingering sadness for what could have been. As the time drew near, Owen and I exchanged a glance, a silent confirmation that we were ready to proceed. But just as I was about to step forward, Naomi appeared at my side, her expression urgent. "Morgan, we need to talk," she said, pulling me aside. "What is it?" I asked, my nerves fraying at the edges. "I overheard something," she said, her voice low. "Caleb's been telling people that you've been unstable, that you're making things up." The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. Caleb wasn't just trying to protect himself. He was actively working to undermine me, to paint me as the villain in this twisted narrative. Anger flared within me, but so did a renewed determination. I couldn't let him win, couldn't let him rewrite the truth. I returned to Owen, my resolve stronger than ever. "We're going through with it," I said, my voice steady. He nodded, understanding the gravity of the moment. Together, we moved to the front of the room, drawing the attention of the crowd. My heart raced as I took a deep breath, ready to lay everything bare. "Thank you all for being here," I began, my voice carrying through the room. "There's something important I need to share." As I spoke, I felt a shift in the room, the air growing tense with anticipation. Caleb and Serena's expressions changed from curiosity to horror as they realized what was happening. I laid out the evidence, the photos, the financial records, each piece a nail in the coffin of their deceit. The room erupted in whispers and gasps, the weight of the truth crashing down like a tidal wave. Caleb tried to protest, his voice rising in desperation, but the evidence was irrefutable. Serena stood frozen, her charm and manipulation stripped away in the harsh light of reality. As I finished, I felt a sense of release, a burden lifted from my shoulders. But with it came a new understanding. This wasn't just about exposing them, it was about freeing myself, about reclaiming my narrative and moving forward on my own terms. The fallout was immediate, the crowd buzzing with shock and disbelief. But amidst the chaos, I felt a sense of clarity. I had faced the storm and emerged stronger, ready to build a new life from the wreckage. As the event wound down, Owen stood by my side, his presence a comforting anchor. "You did it," he said, a note of pride in his voice. "I did," I replied, feeling the truth of it resonate within me. The journey wasn't over, but I was ready to face whatever came next, armed with the knowledge that I could weather any storm. The aftermath of the community event was a whirlwind. The truth was out, and Caleb and Serena were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered reputations. But as the dust settled, I found myself standing in the wreckage of my own life, unsure of what came next. The satisfaction I thought I'd feel was overshadowed by a hollow emptiness, a reminder of all that had been lost. I returned home, the silence of the house pressing in on me. Owen had offered to stay, to help me navigate the chaos, but I needed to be alone, to process everything that had happened. The weight of my decisions hung heavy, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd crossed a line, that in seeking justice, I'd lost a part of myself. The days blurred together, each one bringing new challenges. Caleb, desperate to salvage what remained of his life, began spreading rumors, painting me as the villain. Friends I thought I could trust started to distance themselves, their whispers echoing in the spaces where laughter once lived. I felt the walls closing in, the life I'd built crumbling around me. It was as if I'd been stripped bare, every vulnerability exposed for the world to see. I tried to focus on work, on the things I could control, but even that felt like a losing battle. My mind was a storm of doubt and regret, and I couldn't find my way through the chaos. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table, a knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. It was Naomi, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "Morgan, we need to talk." I nodded, inviting her in. She took a seat across from me, her gaze steady. "I heard about Caleb's rumors," she said, her voice gentle. "You can't let him do this to you." "I don't know what to do," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "It feels like everything's falling apart." Naomi reached across the table, her hand covering mine. "You're stronger than you think. You've come this far, and you're not alone." Her words were a balm to my wounded spirit, but even as she spoke, I felt the weight of my decisions pressing down on me. I'd exposed Caleb and Serena, but at what cost? The lines between justice and revenge had blurred, and I wasn't sure where I stood anymore. As Naomi left, I realized that I needed to confront Caleb one last time, to try and find some semblance of closure. I called him, asking him to meet me at the park, the place where our lives had first collided in chaos. He arrived, his expression guarded, the charm that once captivated me now a distant memory. "Morgan," he said, his voice tinged with bitterness. "Caleb, we need to talk," I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. He shrugged, his defensiveness a shield against the truth. "What's there to talk about? You've already made up your mind." "I didn't want this, Caleb," I said, my voice breaking. "I never wanted things to end like this." He laughed, a hollow sound that cut through the tension. "You think I did? You think I wanted to lose everything?" We stood there, the weight of our choices hanging between us. I could see the pain in his eyes, a reflection of my own, and for a moment, I wondered if things could have been different. But before I could speak, Caleb's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression shifting to one of panic. "I have to go," he said abruptly, turning to leave. "Caleb, wait." I called after him, but he was already walking away, leaving me alone in the fading light. I watched him go, a sense of finality settling over me. The confrontation I'd hoped for had slipped through my fingers, leaving me with more questions than answers. But as I stood there, I realized that maybe the closure I sought wouldn't come from him. Maybe it had to come from within, from finding a way to forgive myself for the choices I'd made. The path ahead was uncertain, and I knew it wouldn't be easy. But I also knew that I couldn't let this define me. I had to find a way to rebuild, to reclaim my life and move forward, even if it meant starting from scratch. As I left the park, I felt a flicker of hope amidst the darkness. The journey wasn't over, but I was ready to face whatever came next, armed with the knowledge that I could weather any storm. The air was thick with tension as I approached the boutique, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew this was it, the moment I would confront Serena and finally lay everything bare. The truth was out in the open, but there were still pieces missing, threads that needed tying up before I could truly move on. As I entered, the bell above the door chimed, announcing my arrival. Serena looked up from the counter, her eyes widening in surprise. "Morgan," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Serena," I replied, keeping my tone steady. "We need to talk." She hesitated, glancing around the empty store before nodding. "All right," she said, gesturing for me to follow her to the back room. The small space was cluttered with boxes and merchandise, a stark contrast to the polished exterior she presented to the world. I could feel the weight of our shared history pressing down on me, the years of friendship tainted by betrayal. Serena crossed her arms, her posture defensive. "What do you want, Morgan?" "I want the truth," I said, meeting her gaze. "I know you manipulated Caleb, threatened him with something from his past." "Why?" She laughed, a brittle sound that echoed in the cramped room. "You think you know everything, don't you?" "I know enough," I replied, refusing to back down. "But I want to hear it from you." For a moment, I thought she might deny it, might try to spin another web of lies. But then her shoulders sagged, the fight leaving her. "Fine," she said, her voice resigned. "I did it. I told Caleb I'd reveal his secret if he didn't do what I wanted." "Why?" I asked, the question hanging between us like a challenge. "Because I was tired of being second best," she snapped, her eyes flashing with anger. "You had everything, Caleb, the perfect life. I wanted a piece of it." Her words cut deeper than I expected, the truth of them stinging like a fresh wound. But beneath the anger, I saw something else, a vulnerability, a fear of losing control. "Serena, you didn't have to do this," I said, my voice softer now. "We were friends." "Were we?" she shot back, bitterness lacing her words. "Or was I just someone you kept around to make yourself feel better?" The accusation hit hard, forcing me to confront the truth of our friendship. Had I taken her for granted? Assumed she'd always be there without considering her own struggles? The realization was a bitter pill to swallow, but it also brought clarity. "I'm sorry," I said, the words surprising even me. "I didn't see it, and I should have." She looked at me, surprise flickering across her face. "You really mean that?" "I do," I replied, feeling the weight of my own mistakes. "But it doesn't excuse what you did." She nodded, a flicker of regret crossing her features. "I know. I didn't know how to stop once it started." We stood there, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words. I realized that this confrontation wasn't about revenge or justice anymore. It was about understanding, about finding a way to move forward. "Serena, what you did was wrong," I said, my voice firm but not unkind. "But we can't change the past. All we can do is try to be better." She nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I'll make it right, Morgan. I promise." As I left the boutique, I felt a sense of closure, a release from the anger that had consumed me for so long. The confrontation had brought me face to face with the core themes of my journey: betrayal, justice, and the possibility of redemption. I stepped out into the street, the sun warm on my face, and felt a flicker of hope for the future. The path ahead was still uncertain, but I knew I was ready to face it, armed with the knowledge that I could weather any storm. As I walked away, I realized that the greatest challenge wasn't confronting Serena or Caleb. It was confronting myself, my own fears and insecurities. And in doing so, I'd found a strength I never knew I had. The weeks following my confrontation with Serena were a time of quiet reflection and gradual healing. The storm that had upended my life was finally settling, leaving behind a landscape I was slowly learning to navigate. I found solace in routine, in the familiar rhythm of work and the small joys of everyday life. Owen was a constant presence, his support unwavering. We spent evenings talking about everything and nothing, our conversations a balm to my wounded heart. There was a warmth between us, a gentle understanding that hinted at something more. But for now, I was content to let it unfold naturally, without the pressure of defining it. One afternoon, as I was sorting through a box of old letters and mementos, I stumbled upon a letter in Caleb's handwriting. It was tucked away in a corner, forgotten amidst the chaos. My heart skipped a beat as I unfolded it, unsure of what I might find. The words were raw and unguarded, a glimpse into a side of Caleb I hadn't seen in a long time. He spoke of his regrets, his failures, and the weight of his insecurities. He admitted to feeling lost, to letting his fears drive him to betray the life we'd built together. But most importantly, he expressed a deep remorse, a wish for forgiveness. Not from me, but for himself. As I read, I felt a complex mix of emotions: anger, sadness, and a surprising sense of empathy. The letter didn't excuse his actions, but it offered a window into his struggle, a reminder that we were all flawed, all capable of making mistakes. I folded the letter carefully, placing it back in the box. It was a reminder of the past, but it didn't define my future. I realized that forgiveness wasn't about absolving Caleb. It was about freeing myself from the burden of anger and resentment. It was about finding peace within, about allowing myself to move forward without the weight of the past holding me back. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Owen and I sat on the porch, the air warm and still. "You've come a long way," he said, his voice soft but filled with admiration. "I have," I replied, feeling the truth of it resonate within me. "It hasn't been easy, but I'm getting there." He nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his lips. "You're stronger than you know, Morgan." The words were simple, but they carried a weight that settled comfortably in my heart. I looked at him, seeing the kindness in his eyes, the quiet strength that had been my anchor through the storm. "Thank you, Owen, for everything." We sat in companionable silence, the night wrapping around us like a comforting blanket. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to embrace it. As we watched the stars blink into existence, I realized that my journey wasn't about revenge or justice. It was about finding my own path, about reclaiming my life and the person I wanted to be. I had faced betrayal and heartbreak, but I had also discovered resilience and compassion, not just for others, but for myself. The road ahead was open, filled with possibilities I was eager to explore. And while some questions remained unanswered, I knew I had the strength to face whatever came next. In the quiet of the evening, I felt a sense of closure, a peace that had eluded me for so long. The past was a part of me, but it didn't define me. I was free to write the next chapter of my life, to embrace new beginnings and the promise of what lay ahead. And as I sat there, surrounded by the warmth of friendship and the promise of tomorrow, I knew that I was finally home.